Hey, welcome back, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Look, we got a new face. Hello, say hello, Nikki.
Hello, Nikki.
We got a new face?
We got a new face.
Nikki got a new face like in Face Off starring John Travolta.
That's exactly right.
And Nicolas Cage.
And Nicolas Cage, man, what a great cast. Let me tell you.
I love that movie. It's a great movie.
Need to pop out the old Chatterino here, and then I can jump right into the announcements.
Cage.
Nikki, what are your thoughts regarding the film Face Off?
I mean, it blew my face off.
Could you eat a peach for hours?
I could try.
Awesome.
Do I have to eat the pit?
I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah, that's why it takes hours. It's because you have to really work it down.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Hello, we are Legends of Avantris, and tonight we're bringing you another episode of Neon Knights and Avantris Talk Show. As always, this is a mature stream, and there may be some light spoilers here and there, so be prepared with that. This is a talk show, and we're going to answer all of your questions regarding different topics and things that we've done here on the channel. If you're looking to support us, which would be absolutely wonderful, there are three main ways that you can do it. Number one is our merch shop. We've got a lot of really great designs that are on a bunch of really awesome items, and we've got a couple more merch runs that are going to be coming soon, namely getting all of our awesome Twitch emotes turned into stickers, and we're going to be updating the Legends of Avantris logo to our new logo, and the old logo merch will no longer be available. Hopefully that's going to be in a few weeks. We don't have a set date on that, but we'll let you know. So now is your chance to get the old logo merch. Number two, we've got our really awesome Patreon. It is one of the best ways to support us because you get a lot of really awesome stuff in return. A couple of examples are a few exclusive campaigns that you can only watch on Patreon and a vlog series that I've been doing every day that I drive to D&D, which has been very, very fun. As always, all of the patron names are rotating on the screen next to me, and we appreciate all of your support. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. And we're trying to bring some, little extra kick to the Patreon coming up. So you don't want to miss it. Go check that out. And of course, the single most important way that you can support us right now is by going to thecrookedmoon.com. We are doing our very first Kickstarter ever. It's very exciting. We absolutely cannot wait to do it. And there's just tons and tons and tons of really, really awesome stuff. Right now, you can become a VIP over on thecrookedmoon.com. You get to join a VIP Discord, which there's going to be just unbelievable amounts of information in there. We dropped a mega information bomb last night. So if you want to get the most up to date on the Crooked Moon, you got to join the VIP Discord. And the only way to do that is to become a VIP today. And I have it on good authority that at 3,500 VIPs, if we do that tonight, we're going to have a big, big, big arc reveal. Last I checked, we're about 60 VIPs away, so doable, absolutely doable.
It's going to be our next subclass, too. So get the name of the subclass and the picture of the subclass in the VIP Discord. We just need less than 60 away.
Awesome.
So that's where we're trying to hit 3,500 by midnight Eastern time.
Thank you. Perfect. Make sure you join our Discord. It's where we've been building an unbelievably amazing community over the last 6 years. Really good stuff. It's where we hang out in between our streams, and there's just lots of really good stuff going on over there. You get the most up-to-date information on all of the things that are stream related, which is fantastic. For all of our socials, like our Twitch, our TikTok, our podcast, etc., you can go to Strodcast.com. That's Strodcast.com. And then, of course, tonight and during all episodes of Neon Nights, we are not doing Twist of Fate. Instead of 500 bits, you can donate a super chat of $5 or more, and you get to ask us a question. Think of it as calling into a radio station. You can ask about the topic at hand. Patrons also have access to asking us a question through the question post on Patreon, which I posted earlier today. So if you want to ask a Neon Nights question, you can go do that on the Patreon, and we'll be getting through as many of them as we possibly can tonight. But don't worry. I am almost guaranteeing that there's going to be a part 3 of this topic. So any questions we don't get to this week, we'll cover next week as well. As far as our upcoming schedule goes, all of our streamed campaigns take place over on our Twitch channel. Tune in over there every Wednesday for Once Upon a Witchlight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The next chapter of Icebound is going to be September 8th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's a Friday. The next episode of Stardust Rhapsody is going to be September 16th at 1 p.m. That's a Saturday. And then, of course, we have Neon Nights right here on YouTube every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. As far as special announcements goes, if you become a member here on Twitch, a member here on YouTube, that's like subscribing on Twitch, you get access to a bunch of really awesome emotes, and we're working on unlocking slots here to get all of the emotes here that we have over on Twitch, yada, yada, yada. Outside of that, does anyone else have any special announcements before I do the YouTube intro? Anything I missed?
The Crooked Moon VIP.
Yeah,
we're trying at 3,500 tonight. Tell your friends.
That's the one.
Tell your family. Tell everybody that you know. We're driving for the VIPs.
My special announcement is that I have to speak to make sure that I'm not echoing.
Okay.
I'm here.
Waiting. All right, sounds good. I'm going to do the YouTube intro. Everybody cool with that?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Neon Nights and Avantris Talk Show. We would absolutely love it if you would like this video, subscribe to our channel, and check the bell so you never miss an episode. Tonight's topic discussion is part 2 of First Time DM Survival Guide. So be sure to leave us a comment below, let us know what you think about this new segment, and offer up suggestions for future episodes. And of course, if you're looking to further support us, be sure to check out our Patreon, our merch shop, and visit thecrookedmoon.com for our very first Kickstarter and become a VIP today. So, gas up your Corvette, tune into your favorite synthwave station, and cruise with us as we enjoy another one of these beautiful Neon Nights. And with that, we can hop right into it. I'm a little out of breath. I had to run downstairs right before we started, and I'm still trying to catch my breath. Let's
You're doing
talk
great,
about...
Andy. You're doing great.
I forgot. Did we mention, sorry if I missed this, we mentioned that the Hootsie campaign goes live on Friday at noon Eastern?
We didn't, because I saw that on the calendar, and I don't think we discussed it in person. I just happened to see it on the calendar.
It's going
and it went in
live.
one brain and not the other.
So we revealed the prototype of Hootsie. It is in our Discord. She's looking adorable. You'll be, if you missed out on the petition phase, it'll be a 3-week campaign starting noon this Friday. If you want your very own Hootsie, it's $29.99, I believe, 29 something. And so
Did we reveal the picture of the prototype?
We did. It is in our announcements. She's looking adorable. And this will be your last chance. If you miss out on these 3 weeks, there's no Hootsie. We're not making her again. The campaign is over. So that's
awesome.
Make sure you get it while you can.
I saw the picture and was absolutely blown away. So I wanted to make sure we shared it with everybody, because I know initially when we first got the picture, we hadn't shown it yet, and I wasn't sure if anybody had seen it. So, Hootsy's looking great. I'm very excited. I can't wait to buy one. I'm buying one for Maggie, so I'm definitely getting one. We got a couple of people to thank. We got some new members. We've got Jacqueline is a new member. We appreciate your support. Thank you so much. And Jay Theo, both of you, welcome so much to the Honk Legion. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
We're gonna jump in. We're gonna cover a little bit about what we talked about last week. And then, of course, we're going to do our recap for the week, which is always a lot of fun. Just to kind of set the scene, right? We've been doing a first-time DMing survival guide. We covered most of the kind of session 0 conversations with players, what I like to call prerequisites. The things that you want to do before you ever sit down at the table, right? We talked a lot about that, making sure that everybody's on the same page, making sure that everybody kind of values the same things at the table, right? Everybody's getting the same thing out of the game as everybody wants to get out of it, right? We covered a lot of that stuff, and we'll do a real quick run through when we get there to make sure we set up the next portion. There's a little bit of prereq stuff left, and then we can really dive into the good stuff. But we got to talk about the previous episode of Witchlight. We got to do our recap like we always do. It's kind of like a miniature Avantris and Chill, but we like to try to get some predictions, right? And it's awesome we've got Nikki here. We never have Nikki here when we talk about our recaps of the week. So I'm very excited to see what she might have to say or not be able to say. Where did we leave off? Oh, we had some, again, light spoilers if you haven't seen the last episode of Witchlight. Kremi got some pretty crazy information about what might be lurking in the wood. We learned a little bit more about the woods around us. We set off through the woods as we started to learn that they moved. We stepped into a fairy ring, and then we were left off at an unbelievable cliffhanger. So my question to all of you, and Nikki, I guess you might be able to answer this one. I don't know. We'll see. What do we think's going to happen next? Well, we need predictions. We haven't had any predictions in a while, so we got to get a prediction of what we think's going to happen on Wednesday.
I mean, that's tough. I have no way of knowing what's going to happen next, or what I could possibly predict for you. I mean, for us, really. I mean, we're a neck bet. What is?
That's right. Gentlemen, what do you think?
I think we went back in time.
Really?
I think it's the Hourglass Coven, and what's her name? Bavlorna was the person of the present. I don't know if we've learned which one Scabifa is. Have we? Have we learned if she's present or if she's?
Yes, yeah, I think we have a sense of it. Yeah.
Is she passed?
I'd have to check my notes.
I want to say that the other one is future, and so by the process
I think she's passed.
Elimination.
I think she's passed, and so I believe that we went back to olden times.
Wow.
Times.
That passed though.
I believe so.
Times.
That is my personal theory.
Okay.
And so we get to have a fun, Egyptian mummy. If we don't, we got to get to fight some mummies. We get to
I think that's a really
meet
great
a sphinx. We
That's
get to
I never,
fuck
I didn't
behind a
think you were
palm
gonna take
tree.
it that direction.
We get to meet Willy Worm.
No.
A lot of stuff is coming.
Wow. Derek, do you have a theory that could possibly contend with Mike's amazing theory?
No, Derek isn't not even close. Derek's not even close.
I love your reaction to that, Derek.
We get those a lot.
But do you actually have something that's better?
You know what? I had a better theory, but now I'm not going to say it.
Yeah,
You have to
no,
share
go
it. You're
ahead.
on the show. You're not allowed to keep it to yourself.
I don't have a better theory. My theory is that this is a terrific cul-de-sac that we chose for ourselves to go down because I know where Nikki's passions lie. And when the DM is excited about something, that tends to affect the party in the same ways. And so my prediction is that whatever happens in the next session or two, or however long we're going down this cul-de-sac, that it's going to be juicy as fuck. I'm really excited about it. Like, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Wednesday.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think, Witchlight is always just unbelievably hype, and I'm always ready for it. And we've had some unbelievable cliffhangers the last few weeks. And this one I think is up in a top 5 cliffhanger thus far for me. I haven't been in the campaign as long as you guys, but unbelievable cliffhanger. I'm really excited to see where it goes. I like Mike's prediction. We'll have to see if we get information about that next week and see if he was right. I think it's a fantastic prediction.
The last thing I'll say is that I know we're doing sort of loosely the module, but this is a really fun moment where we get to sort of step out. I'm assuming that the module doesn't have a section or a chapter where you go to neckbat. Just guessing that might be the case. So to get some Avantris Sands blowing, I'm going to be listening to the Mummy soundtrack for the next 2 days.
If it does, if the official Witchlight module has a reference to neckbet, who do we contact about that? There's got to be.
We've got people. We've got people about that. We'll call the Pinkertons.
Yeah, jeez. Oh god, we can't get through one stream without talking about Pinkertons. Unbelievable. Okay. That was we're gonna move on. That was a really great recap. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I had a point last week where I asked you guys, specifically Mike and Derek, stories about from the very first time that you DM'd ever, and to kind of talk about that a little bit. And Nikki didn't get a chance, so I'm really glad that she's here tonight for this question, and also a question that I'm going to save for the very end. But if you feel like it, Nikki, can you remember the very first time that you ever DM'd, and just kind of let our fellow new DMs in chat kind of feel that they're not alone, and maybe tell us a little bit about what that was like, how you were feeling, and how it went, and what your expectations were. Just go for it. If you can remember the very first time you ever DM'd.
Yeah, I mean, I can, but I'm going to have to put Mike, Rich, and Scotes on blast.
That's okay. That's what it's for. That's what we're here.
The first time I ever DM'd was actually Curse of Strahd. And it was, obviously, Mike had been DMing for a long time, and I picked up the Curse of Strahd module, fell in love with it immediately, read it 3 times, and was like, I have to DM this. And so I asked them to play. They were like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. Obviously, it was a home game. We didn't stream it or anything. And I was so excited. I was thinking about how would Mike do this and what would Mike do? And then thinking about what some of my strengths are, which are a little more on the prop and creative side. So I spent 3 hours making 2 maps. One of the city of Barovia.
Yeah, it was intense.
And one of the overland travel. On these maps that we have, I don't think, if you can see them, they're really old. But these dry erase maps, one side's got the squares, the other side has the hex. Both of those were full. And with different colors and drawings.
It was intense.
And I went all out for it. And I was so excited. And I knew how it was going to happen. And we start to play, and I'm scared shitless. I'm shaking the entire time because my DM, my DM was at my table. And to be fair, Mike took it the most seriously. It was his first time being a player, really.
Yeah.
And so I can't really put Mike on blast because he helped me get through it. But I could tell Scoots was not having a good time and Rich was not having a good time.
Okay.
And I think it was because we were so used to Mike's games where they were homebrew and we had so much freedom. And the moment I told them, no, you can't walk out into the mist, you'll start to suffocate. And it's just what? you're gonna stop us from doing this thing we want to do. I'm like, there's not. It's just how it works. And then it's we have to go into the city. It's like, well, everything else is surrounded by mist. And so they really didn't like the railroady aspect of it because I had never DM'd before and it was a module. And I thought, if the module says it, I have to do it. It was a little bit of clashiness there, trying to figure out how to DM the way I wanted to and DM a story I wanted to for the people that I care about, but when we're used to a different style of D&D altogether. And it was a really big learning opportunity for me to realize that flexibility is hands down the best thing that you could possibly have as a DM. That was the session that made me realize if they don't seem like they're liking something that's happening in the module, throw it out. Throw it out, do something else. You know your friends, and hopefully you do. And you kind of have an idea of what they like, and keep your eyes and ears out for the way people are being receptive to things. And it was a huge opportunity for me to figure out how to read my friends in a way that allowed me to change things in the moment and not be so married to, well, I have to do this because it's written down there, or because I drew this here and it's important in the story, they have to go there first, or they have to do that first. And it was a really big learning opportunity for me in that way.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. And I'm very excited to continue to ask you questions tonight because I don't get to do this with you very often. I think it's very important context for many of the people watching right now that the Curse of Strahd that you are referencing is not our Curse of Strahdanya.
No.
And it's pretty funny that we kind of came full circle with you starting with Curse of Strahd and then you building this absolutely beautiful magnum opus, and basically coming back to it and making it your bitch.
I mean, I couldn't get it out of my mind. Like that first experience, I knew that it didn't go the way I wanted it to. And every October I came back around like, God, I want to run this module. And finally I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ask them. The worst thing they say is no. The best thing that they do is say yes. And that's what happens.
Good. It
was a win.
I think that there's not a person alive that would say it wasn't a win. And that we all learned. And great answer. So thank you. We appreciate that. I'm so glad that you're here tonight.
Thanks, Andy.
With that, I think we can jump right in to the topics. We have a ton of questions from people on Patreon. So I want to kind of start to get into what we're talking about, and then I'll shift back and forth and we'll answer some questions and we'll come back. We talked about conversations with players, right? We talked about what does everyone want out of the game, right? Narrative to mechanics ratio. What type of tone are you going for as the DM? We said Strahd versus Witchlight, right? Scheduling and commitment. Don't let the calendar be the big bad. Some people run games where the group is rotating and not everyone needs to be there, et cetera, et cetera. That was a lot of what we discussed last time. Where we left off was actually a question that I kind of got from Derek is, as a first-time DM, are you willing to put restrictions on your game? Such as what type of characters are you allowing? Are you looking for certain archetypes? Are you doing a race or class limitation like Derek did for Icebound? I open the floor to anybody. Do you have advice for first-time DMs if they're looking to maybe put some limitations on their game in the idea that limitations can sometimes breed creativity?
Yes, I think you said that I did that for Icebound. And I think that if I went back and did it again, I might do it a little differently, but I am still a big believer in subtraction leads to art. Oftentimes it's not add this, and it just becomes this big clunky thing. Oftentimes, if you are forced to express yourself in a narrower way, be it with your character, be it with the scenario, be it with if you don't have all of the options in the world, but you have just a few, the patterns of creativity emerge more quickly. And I believe in that now. I believed in it then when we started Icebound, and I believed in it when I created before I started running games in Avantris. I had my own homebrew setting. Materia was what I called it, with a Y, because I was super cool and I liked Final Fantasy VII. And the limitations in that world were much more aggressive than even what I did with Icebound. Whole races do not exist in that setting.
Wow.
There are very few gods and devils and demons. It is extremely narrow because that was what made sense to my bite-sized DM brain at the time, and because I felt that it would lead to more focused storytelling. I didn't want my world to be the gamut and everything. I wanted to tell stories in a world where I sort of knew what the past, present, and future looked like, because that's what made sense to me at the time. If I start a new campaign after Icebound, I will, then I will be very specific about the limitations that I ask my players to observe. It will be a dialogue. It is not a hard and fast, I'm drawing a line in the sand and going, this is Derek's way or the highway. It is, this is what I think will benefit the story. These limitations in terms of your character choices, selections, and what you plan, not your agency. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but in terms of where you start, this is the seed that we are planting, and we're going to water it by playing Dungeons and Dragons, and what you grow into will be something totally different and new. But the seed qualities, what race you have, what classes and subclasses you have, all those things that go into it, and the homebrew rules that I enforce, and the theme of the campaign, we're going to figure out what our lane is, and we're going to tell a story inside of that smaller domain, because we'll all benefit and tell a more robust story for it. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me with that, but that's my philosophical reasoning and approach to thinking about limitations in Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games in general.
Yeah, great answer. Nikki, Mike?
Yeah, I think limitations can be really good, especially because I think about it from the perspective of, if you go out to dinner and you have a gigantic menu, it becomes a lot harder to decide what you actually want, and you're more than likely to be disappointed in the meal that you get. I'm hungry, by the way. And it's the same thing in D&D. Sometimes having a million choices can muddy the water of what you really want, and distilling it down to something that's a smaller pool to choose from allows you to put more mental energy into deciding who that character is instead of what that character is. And I think that's really, at least for our campaigns, the heart of what we do here at Legends of Avantris is our characters should feel like a person that you could meet. And that comes from the fact that we do narrow things down a little bit more. I think had you asked Nikki, who DM'd Curse of Strahd way back in the beginning, original Curse of Strahd, unstreamed version, I would have said no, like, you never want to limit those kinds of things. And then when I came back around to Curse of Strahd to actually stream it and to actually play it, I did limit things. And I think that was hands down the best choice that I could have possibly made for Curse of Strahd, was to say, if you're coming to my table, these are my rules. Because I think a lot of times we focus along D&D, especially with session zeros, it's what's comfortable for the players, what do the players want, what are they looking for. There does need to be that question as the storyteller, as the DM, what are you looking for? And what is it that you need the players at your table to be able to agree to be able to tell the story that is inside of your heart? Because as a DM, if you can do that, and you feel the freedom to tell that story you want to, your players are going to have way more fun than if you feel like you can't do that because there isn't that agreement.
I've got a follow-up question before Mike jumps in for Nikki. So with Witchlight, right, 3 of the characters were returning, right? And obviously they went through the Avantris process again, or for the first time. A lot of revamp for 3 of the characters. And Gideon was the new addition, and then, of course, later down the line, Torbeck. Did you have any restrictions? Because we never explicitly talked about it, but like mentally, did you have any limitations or restrictions that if I had come to you with something, you would have said, nah, doesn't belong here?
Only in the sense of, if you had tried to make a character that was a little too serious, I probably would have been like, I don't know if because Gideon's not serious, but he's not completely goofy and wacky. Kremi's pretty serious. He can be goofy and wacky, but he is pretty serious. And Frost is also pretty serious when he's not goofy and wacky. And I felt like we needed at least a little bit more whimsy in the campaign. Sure. So especially when you joined, and knowing you, I felt like playing something funny and goofy and allowing you to kind of kick off your shoes a little bit more and focus more on just having a good time versus trying to Iris and Felix things
Right.
might be a little better for the campaign. But that was just in the back of my mind. I think if you'd come to me with a fleshed out character that was more serious, that really fit, I would have said yes.
Sure.
Witchlight, I have been just a lot more flexible and relaxed than with Edge of Midnight or with any of the horror campaigns that I do.
Makes sense. Mike?
Are we talking about restrictions in what term? I may have missed a little bit.
Well,
of the question.
no. Really, any term, as you see fit as the DM, right? I would say when it came to Prime and Beneath Dark Wings, you had some general guidelines, but you didn't really have anything that you came to us with that said, like, no, you cannot do this, outside of, not going through the Avantris process or something that didn't thematically fit. But maybe a better way to answer this is, would you put limitations on your future campaigns, or did you have any kind of, like, hidden, restrictions that didn't come up?
Yeah, so I think as far as restrictions, I will never start another campaign that doesn't have far more restrictions and far more of a collaborative process for the party.
There you go.
I think I've mentioned this before. If and when I start DMing another campaign, it will have the same kind of party creation process as Edge of Midnight and as
Curse of Strahd.
Curse of Strahd and Stardust Rhapsody, where the party is deliberately crafted to match the theme of the campaign and is done in a collaborative way where the party is crafted together so that the various tropes and archetypes and niches of a good story are filled. And to me, that is very restrictive. I think some people call that very restrictive, but to me, that is absolutely critical for when the same way that I felt at the end of the night on Saturday is how I felt at the end of the night on our first session. Although actually we didn't really know until Mace was there, so maybe episode 2 of Edge of Midnight when Yorgrim showed up. Of this is fucking incredible. That was done by a restrictive process. That was done by it being, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Like, it needs to fit within the kind of overall story and the overall theme. Granted, that's a very specific type of story we're trying to tell. That's a very specific way that we're playing. And some people just want to play a fucking half-elf bard where their theme is half-elf bard and their theme is the dagger on their character sheet they get in their starting equipment. Sure.
I think that there are a lot of parties that start off where you go and you pick what options are most attractive to you, sound cool. You just go through the player's handbook or whatever supplements you have, and you make choice A, choice B, choice C. You have a character sheet. You're ready to play. You've got the dice. You're ready to play, and then the story starts, and you are adventuring adventurers, doing adventure, and then adventure happens, and there is nothing wrong with that. People play that for hundreds of hours, and they have the best time. They still have maps, and they have like that. That is certainly fine. But I will say, if you haven't experienced a shared collaborative story with the kind of features that Mikey just described, I think that you should reconsider and maybe give it a try, because it can be extremely rewarding when if we did Edge of Midnight and I was like, you know what, Bitsy is a cool character, I'm going to play that. How much air would I be letting out of the balloon of the tension and import of that story? It's because I enjoyed it as a player. It's not just because we screamed.
And I think when it comes to that said, I think that when it comes to building your world, and I think I mentioned this last week. Apologies if I am repeating myself.
No, you're
where
good.
The whole point of Avantris was that as a world, as it's being created, is that I do not need to sit you down and give you a several page primer on Avantris in order for you to have any idea of what the fuck is going on. Well, actually, in my setting, there's only this, and this, and our dwarves are sky-faring crab sheep who actually, instead of mining gems and gold, they collect raindrops, which they then harness into essences that they turn into pies. That's the dwarves. So you got to learn that, and don't ever think of a dwarf with a beard, right?
Right.
And if I need to say, well, actually, in my setting, all of these things are fucking like super unique, and it's totally fine. You can do that, and obviously, I think that suddenly, if I need to do a bunch of homework to understand what's happening in an adventure, I feel like that's a lot of friction, especially for a first-time party, new players, right?
My name is Krarf, and you're gonna love my essence pie. It's
Stop.
bad.
Stop.
That's
Thank
really
you,
good.
dear.
That's really
Thank
good.
you.
And I think that you know, obviously do plenty. I recommend, you know, if your party's all into it and you want to have a bunch of different restrictions, like a bunch of different things of like, well, this, you know, doesn't exist and this doesn't exist and this is actually this and this is actually this, you know, and the party wants to do a bunch of homework before they sit down and play a session 0, that's totally fine as well. But I would recommend, you know, keeping it as open and generic as, you know, and people kind of throw shade at settings that are kind of not Forgotten Realms. But like, you can look into fucking Baldur's Gate and you get a fucking idea of what's happening without having to do any kind of research, right?
Right.
And there is a benefit to that. But then going back on the other side, as far as, are we gonna talk about Sandbox versus Railroad? Are we gonna talk about that at all?
We are.
Okay,
We
then
are.
I will hold off.
We haven't actually gotten into the actual like DMing yet. This has all been kind of like pre-work, right? You know, collaborative pre-work. Before we go on to the next topic, though, what I do want to say is that Corey had a question, and I know that they had to say good night, so I was trying to catch them before they leave. Worst case scenario, hopefully they can rewatch the episode. But Corey's question is, my players are blasting through my first arc really fast. How do I create ways to slow them down so that the story lasts? I think this is a very common problem with new players and new DMs in general, where Mikey has said on more than one occasion, you get people who are like, I want to get to the next point. Give me the next point. I don't want to what's the next story hook, right? So do you all have advice for slowing, pumping the brakes in your campaign a little bit?
Mikey?
I think I've said this many times that pacing is the hardest, most difficult, and hardest earned skill. I think for DMing. Obviously, you know, your mileage may vary. For me, like, you know, at least that's my hot take. I think when it comes to pacing, going through the story quickly is not necessarily a bad thing unless you feel like it's just blowing through and the pacing is not having the time to breathe and it feels too fast for your group. If it is, I would think about what are the reasons, how are they able to blow through the story very quickly? Are they skipping things? Are they blowing past things? If they're able to skip things, those should have consequences that lead them down into the various cul-de-sacs, and they should be able to face those consequences and kind of let that, you know, that which immediately will slow things down, right? But make sure, do not feel like you can't throw in a roadblock of like, you've been skipping all of this. Here is a consequence that is a problem that you need to take time to solve, right? And I think that basically if they're going against a villain that has some broader plan, they're going to be actively trying to sabotage the party and delaying them. So it is reasonable within the meta, presumably within the plot of this campaign and the adventure, that the villain, the antagonist, whatever it is, would be trying to delay them. And so really kind of thinking about the consequences of the actions that they're taking in order to kind of force the party to kind of slow down and pay attention to the story beats in whatever story you're trying to tell.
Great advice.
My advice would be talk to your players. Last week before Edge of Midnight, I actually said to the players, hey, you're in a new place. Don't feel the need to try and rush from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. I know we just got out of an area where there were a lot of things coming to a head and you learned a lot of new information. But we are in a new place now that you've never explored. If you are in the middle of the forest, feel free to explore the forest. Do things that you wouldn't expect to do. Don't try and look for the next breadcrumb from the DM. Try to just exist in the space as if you were really there and see what happens from there. And it's okay as a DM to go to your players outside of the game and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for from you. Can you guys do that for me? It would be awesome. You know, your players more than likely will be like, oh yeah, sure. I didn't even realize. Because I think a lot of times they're probably just having fun and don't even realize that they're potentially missing things or overlooking stuff.
Just to clarify, Nikki, you just set the chat on fire. She meant Wishlight, not Edge. No, we're not secretly playing Edge of
sorry.
Midnight.
Yeah, I've been I've been typing up things about Edge of Midnight lately. So
Yeah, no.
it's on the brain.
Yeah,
Which
now
light,
the
which light, which
conspiracy theories are going to run wild.
How
Oh,
cruel would
Yeah.
it be if we were playing Edge of Midnight and not streaming it and just like having we're 14 new sessions down the road? That would be the cruelest thing.
That would be the
possible
worst thing I've ever fucking heard. The idea of that makes me viscerally angry.
I think people would find us and destroy us.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And for good reason.
For sure.
I don't
Find them and
trust y'all
destroy
with
them.
anything anymore. Fair.
Derek,
Um,
how do you slow us down? How does a first-time DM slow anybody down?
So time is something that you control as a DM, and this is a skill that is connected to the pacing, storytelling angle that Mikey was talking about. But I will also go in a mechanical direction and say that you get to say how fast it takes or how long it takes for them to go from one place to another, in two ways. One, if something is happening where a choice is being made and you don't feel that there's buy-in with the rest of the party, that is a really terrific moment to draw things out and say, that character seems to be going down hallway number one. You haven't made a determination one way or the other. Do you reach out and pause? What are you doing while they start to head in this direction? You can literally bullet time it and bring everything to a halt and talk to you and have your players talk about what decision is happening. If you feel that perhaps one or more players are driving in a more gamular way and just treating everything like, oh, we roll the dice, we find out the outcome, we move on to the next thing. We roll the dice. That is a tool in your toolkit that not every beginner DM knows exists, and so use that. The other way is via role play and via character. A really terrific way to slow everyone down. Combat just ended. Or an encounter just finished, or they're about to make some pivotal choice about whether they're going to go down hallway 1, 2, or 3. How are you feeling? What is your character feeling in this moment? What are you thinking about? Anything that asks them about the emotion and forces everyone to contribute a little bit, that's going to take time. It's going to soak up time, and it forces people to confront the characters that they're inhabiting. It forces them to role play a little bit. It forces them actively or passively, even if no one is doing accents or being in character. They're simply saying, my character does this. Questions like that get them to pause, step back from the canvas, and think about the story we're all telling will also allow you to control that pacing and allow them to have to force themselves to take a breath before they continue down hallway 1, 2, or 3. There's a show and tell factor here. If you have an NPC in the room, don't go into the next room. Can we talk about this decision for a moment? Can you give me an idea of what we're doing here? Can you anything that you can role play that where they're forced to engage and actually talk, because at a certain point it's going to go the other way. Right now, you're probably feeling like you're pushing this boulder of a story because you've got to make sure that there's content always ready around the next corner, down hallway 1, down hallway 2, down hallway 3. If you're doing it right, eventually the boulder has its own momentum. Eventually it gets away from you, and you're going to actually have to figure out where the brakes are.
Right.
That is the other side of this coin, is my characters are going too slow. I wanted to do this, and this in a single session, and I only got through 1 and 2. That is something where, great, that's awesome. Figuring out how to push is an equal part of the skills of being a DM. Pulling looks like, are they talking to each other? Does any of the characters actually sit down for 10 minutes and have a campfire moment and go, wow, that was a crazy encounter that we just had. Can we unpack this? What are you thinking about it? Because my favorite time as a DM is when I'm sitting back like this and they're just figuring out what the fuck. That is that is the magic trick that you have to figure out what works for your. I can't tell you what's going to work exactly for the people who are playing at your table and for your character makeup and all of those things. But that's the goal is that wonderful snapping moment where the magic trick has occurred and all of a sudden you go, this is right in the middle. This is not too fast, not too slow. I've got the Goldilocks of storytelling right now. All you have to do is figure out how to maintain that balance once you've struck it.
So that's a really good point. And we're going to talk about pacing in a little bit. And I think a lot of what you said may overlap with that when we get there. But that was a very, very poignant way to say that, and it was a nice segue. And we're definitely going to talk about pacing a little bit later, which I think is, for the first time ever on the show, something that I don't have an opinion on because I've never really had to even worry about it. And I'm very excited to hear what all of you have to say about pacing. The next point is actually running your session zero. Let's say you've had all these conversations, right? You've talked about all of the stuff that you need to talk about, with your players, or you're a player, you've spoken with your DM. Everybody's in alignment, everything's looking good, everybody's got buy-in, right? You're good from everybody. So what does your session zero consist of? How do you decide what a session zero looks like? Is it canon? Is it non-canon? Have we ever done any canon session zeros? I know we've done a ton of non-canon session zeros. How do you decide that as a DM, and what should you do as a first-time DM?
Great question.
I'll just pick up because I'm bookending from the last, which is just to say that if you're not a patron, I've written and reviewed with the rest of the Avantris crew my philosophical approach to session zeros. So you can go download that PDF. I want to hear from you. I want to hear, hey, I ran a session zero and I read this and this is how it went, and it went horribly or it went great. And that will continue to improve that thing, because the work of learning as a DM is never over. My philosophical approach is that the session zero is not the prologue session. There's a playing of the game where you test out and try the things that you've all agreed to do when it comes to the rules, when it comes to the theme, when it comes to the overall story. It can be non-canon, it can be canon, whatever. It's a trial run prologue session. My opinion is a session zero is when you answer all those questions. Who are you? What is the story about? What's going to happen? What are we playing a module? Is it totally homebrew? What homebrew rules are we going to implement? There are a million questions that I'm not thinking of. Those are just the ones off the top of my head. But it's one of the most important things. Is it the most important thing? It might be the most important thing that you do before engaging in a campaign. And it's because when I ask you to play a campaign with me, a campaign, we're not talking about 4 sessions of D&D, right? We might be talking about 40 sessions of Dungeons and Dragons. They each take 3 to 5 hours, maybe more. I'm asking you for 120 hours of your fucking life, maybe 240, and we aren't going to agree about how to do that ahead of time. The value of having a meta conversation in the form of a session zero before you begin cannot be understated. I struggle to think of more important work than sitting down and agreeing on the expectations of how we're going to think about role play. What's the schedule? What tools are we going to use? Is it going to be virtual? Is it at the table? Is it a hybrid? Is it always? There are so many ways to talk about and think about Dungeons and Dragons. Have that conversation for an hour or two before you play a trial run, and you're going to be setting yourself up for success like crazy. That's my lukewarm take. I think that no one should disagree with that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I think that when it comes to actually session zero in the first session, right, that doesn't, if you don't want to count it as a session one, I honestly think you can't go wrong by deciding whether to make it canon or non-canon. If that's the question, right, Andy? Is that the?
It's part of the question. Yeah, it's what should a session zero consist of?
So without, we talked ad nauseum last week about getting on the same page, making sure that your philosophy and your values are the same for D&D. We've already covered that. So with that in mind, I think that there's honestly, it's pros and cons, where I think that if something feels non-canon, you can, as a session zero, you can feel out your character and you don't feel like you're locked in. You can get a sense of this and you can feel like the stakes are a lot lower. And if you treat it kind of more like a one-shot, it can make it feel like it's a lot less pressure, especially if there's new players, there's a new dynamic. It doesn't feel as quote-unquote precious if it's not part of the overarching grand story that you're eventually trying to tell. And it can put people at ease. I think there's that value. On the other hand, because the stakes aren't as high, it might feel, and people might prefer to have it feel like kind of the prologue of your adventure, of the party meeting, or kind of having this grand sense of something actually starting and beginning that will lead into a broad adventure. That can help enhance the stakes and, like I said, the heroism and the epicness. So I think that, it really just depends on what makes the most sense for your party.
Well said.
I like the Session Zero to play in some way to the overall campaign, because I think, at least for me and what I do, I just feel like it kind of leads to what Mike was saying in the later portion. Like, when it's just a one-shot, at least for me, when I'm playing, I sometimes don't take it as seriously. And so I miss opportunities to maybe potentially change something about my character I would have if I took it as seriously as knowing that this session could be important, it could be impactful. Now, for us, I always, when we do our session zeros, we film them with the expectation that if they're good, we'll put them online. And I like that, because if maybe we wanted to change things, or it didn't go as well, or there was some kind of party dynamic that was missing, or something about the way we were telling the story didn't fit and we need to make those changes, nobody but us has to see it. We can still, like, I'll go back to when Mike did session zeros for Beneath Dark Wings. We did multiple session zeros, and all of our characters at some point in the campaign have referenced those session zeros as if they were canon.
Yep.
That's very true.
And I think that has been important for all of the campaigns. Our session zero for Curse of Strahd is our prologue. And it is available to watch. And that was our session zero. That was where people were feeling out the campaign and seeing what we thought, and we easily could have changed things. And I think part of the reason it worked was because it did lead to Barovia, and everyone was playing their characters as if this is my character, this is the story, this is how I want it to feel, and if something doesn't feel right, we can still change it. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing with session zeros, is whether they're canon or whether they're not canon, be comfortable with changing things, and once again, being flexible. As a DM, as a player, it doesn't matter if you're 20 sessions or 2 sessions into a campaign. If you come up against something where you're like, I don't like this, it's not working, I wish this were different, talk to your DM, talk to your players, change it. Anything can be changed, anything can be retconned.
I agree. I love that take, thank you. Icebound, I consider our session zero or prologue session to be loosely canon. We all made a little changes to what I was doing, to our characters, but I say in the very first 5 minutes of the intro for Icebound is you started off in a prison, essentially, and there was a reason you were there. Session zero tells that story. I like that that's a breadcrumb where we can always think back to.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
And on the alternative, like that for both Stardust Rhapsody and Edge of Midnight, which are 2 of my favorite starts that we've had, the session zero was non-canon, and it was just kind of a goofy thing, and we were like, oh man, whoa, that was rough. Like a lot of us were like, oh yikes, we really need to do a lot of work. Woo! Right. And so being able to kind of say, okay, do over, allowed that sessions 1 to kind of just fucking rock it out of the gate, having that feedback for when things get canon. So, but you can see in Curse of Strahdanya, we did it with canon, and we still felt it out. We kind of went back and edited a few things and kind of for the podcast and did all that. And so you can really do it both ways and still have it.
There's no wrong way.
Yeah.
Whatever, as a DM or players, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable.
Awesome. I've actually got another question from Chris. Thank you so much for your awesome super chat. We really appreciate it. Huge $10 super chat. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. The question is, for the DMs, of course, what is your process of getting out of your own head and being confident at the table? I'm fairly nervous about leading a table as someone who's been a player in my friend group. Much love. Thank you so much for the question.
I've already gone first twice. I can't.
Well, you can. It's up to you. It's up to you guys. Whoever's feeling. How do you as a DM kind of get ready and prepare and feel that confident role?
The first time I DM'd people into the Feywild, the old Feywild campaign, I took 2 shots of tequila. That's one way. I honestly think that there is something about sitting behind the DM screen that does help. There is a separation there, which can help you to turn your brain off a little bit and be like, I'm not Nikki, I'm Twig today. I think A lot of it is just practice. And I know that's not the answer a lot of people want to hear because you want to be comfortable right away. But as I talked about with my first experience DMing, I was horrified. I shook the entire time. I think the first 6 episodes of People into the Feywild, I was sick to my stomach when I was finished DMing. I still had a great time, but there is a level of reps that you kind of have to put in before that comfort comes naturally. And it wasn't up until, I would say, halfway through Curse of Strahd that I stopped getting pre-session, like, stage fright. And we had played a lot of D&D. We streamed for people. I had done a lot of D&D as a DM at that point, and you still get scared, and so it just takes time.
Yeah, I mean, granted I don't DM anymore, but what I'll say is that when I do DM, I've been DMing for, since 2015. So how long is that? 8 years?
8
Yeah.
years.
8 years, and I still am terrified. I'm still scared at the beginning of every single session. Every single session, unless it's root. Because then the points are made up and nothing matters. And that's the fun of it, right? Where it's entirely just improv. But like for a classic D&D adventure, where where it's not really just kind of improvisational, wacky madcap comedy, it scares the shit out of me every single fucking time. And I think that's one of those things is where, and this is what I was talking to Andy, it was unrelated to actually running a session. But if you're scared and nervous, it's a good thing because that means it matters and it means that you're taking it seriously. And if you're like, oh, whatever, dude, I don't fucking care, like, that's not a good attitude to have, in my opinion. Like, it should matter. And you should either be feeling either nervous or scared or zen and at peace because you're confident and you're excited or whatever it is. It shouldn't be, it doesn't fucking matter. So it's better to be scared than apathetic.
Great point. Fantastic point.
Absolutely. I would echo what Nikki said, which is the reps will help. Start having rituals. There's a reason why I start every session with my DM area has to be exactly where I need it to be. I've always got my music on. That music emotionally will take you to a different place than if it's completely silent. And there's nothing wrong with telling your players that you are nervous. There's no reason to hide it. This is a collaborative storytelling game where we're all playing to win Dungeons and Dragons together, and that doesn't mean that the Dungeon Master TPKs the party, and it doesn't mean that the party achieves the objective. Winning in Dungeons and Dragons is, did we tell the story good? Did we have the character moments that we wanted? Did the cool thing that you wanted as a DM happen the way that you wanted it to, or that you wanted, or that players, that they were aspiring to have some moment? Did that come off? Going into a game being prepared to learn and being always ready to fail with each other in front of each other is part of what makes, I think, a great Dungeons and Dragons group. You are not alone. That DM screen is not separate. You are merely the game engine, but you are also playing Dungeons and Dragons. Though you are taking this role of authority and judgment, it's good to remember that they're not playing against you, they're playing with you. And so it still happens in Icebound. I'll be in the middle of what I'm enjoying and the whole thing, and I'll mess up an accent. Or I'll make a call or I'll forget something. Oh, I forget things all the time. I forgot to mention this really important thing that you walk past. I just say it. We rewind if we have to. We figure out what the right storytelling choice is. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't have to look like Shakespeare being performed by experienced actors who've had 25 years in theater with all this stuff. It's about having fun. And the nerves, feel them if you feel them. Continue to play. The rituals, I think, of getting into a DM space will be extremely helpful. But don't be afraid of it. I get nervous before Icebound, depending on what I want to achieve, on and off all the time. And it's just a matter of jumping into the deep end, because all of a sudden when that water hits you, you're not going to be thinking about the nerves. You're going to be thinking about, oh, that's an interesting spell interaction. Oh, that's an interesting thing. You're going to be thinking about other things.
Right. That's a fantastic answer. The cold pool analogy is something that we reference all the time. I wanted to apologize because I'm kind of going back and forth between what you were saying and the command center, and it's because I'm receiving a transmission. It looks like it says it's coming from the Rhapsody. Well, what do we have here?
Some say the universe is a song, that all things are made from the same stuff as the stars, and that every life is a note in the music of existence that echoes through infinity. So when you feel insignificant and alone, just remember, we're all irreplaceable parts of that grand cosmic melody, the Stardust Rhapsody.
Well, look who we have here. It's a wild Mace. Speaking of the Rhapsody, holy smokes. Welcome, buddy. It's good to see you again.
Hey, everybody. I thought I heard somebody mention space. So I heard my telltale call, and here I am.
How's it going on that ship in space that you're on right now?
Well, you'll have to join me on the command deck in a few short weeks, and you can find out yourself.
It wouldn't be a first-time DM Neon Knights theme if we didn't have you here to also talk about your first time, DMing and things like that. This is part 2. We've done a lot of talking about the prerequisites before you ever sit down for your session 0. We talk a lot about communicating with your players communicating with DMs, a lot of the prerequisite stuff. But what I've had every DM do thus far is to let the audience know that they're not alone. Tell us a little bit about what it was like your very first time DMing ever, and what you were feeling and how it went and what your expectations were, and tell us a little bit about it.
Wow, my first time ever.
Yep.
To think back on the memory now, I think still racks my body with nerves. It was a totally wild experience. I think it was like I probably spent hours upon hours and days like reading and trying to get all the rules down and trying to be ready to like kind of handle everything. And I was so nervous. I had like the starter set for Dungeons and Dragons, right, which came with the Lost Mines of Phandelver. Canonically Barnabas's favorite module, and I was going through it, and I was kind of reading through, and I think one of my players I think had mentioned that they'd played it before, and I was like, well, I think I've just never played D&D before. I have a cool story in my head that I think I want to kind of navigate through, but I just don't really know how to structure something. So I kind of I actually worked with Mikey. Because this was all inspired by playing Shadows over Gauntlet at the table with everybody here. And we ended up going through, we kind of ended up totally revamping this story. It became something completely different. It was just so like bone crunchingly crazy, nerve wracking. And then there's always this moment, and it always is, right? Like at the start, like it hasn't changed. It's always felt the exact same. Like so far, no matter how many times I've done it, which is not many times, but there's always this moment, at least for me, where you're kind of in the early settings and you see like the first moments of your players like really enjoying it or really digging it and really getting into it. And it's almost like it's the first time like you're able to kind of exhale and like the first breath you can really take and like, it's going okay. You know, like Andy's picking it up, Derek's picking it up. You know, Mikey's doing his thing or whatever.
Yeah, right.
You know, but like everybody's having a great time. And great, like, you know, the same kind of thing ended up happening at home. And really kind of everyone dove in and it ended up being a super awesome, fun time. But I mean, I don't think I remembered a single rule. I think I just like off the top just like made crazy determinations.
Yeah.
I told somebody they couldn't have a masquerade mask and that like I'll never live it down. You know,
no.
It's the bane of my DM career to this day.
How could you? A masquerade mask?
They couldn't find a masquerade mask at a shop, and I had a very clear concept of what I wanted certain things to like be and accomplish, and I think that was kind of like my downfall in those settings was not being quite as capable of pivoting to things and really seeing like, well, what's like, how do you just reward people for asking cool questions and doing cool things? And
sure.
You know, I wish I'd been able to do that a little bit better at the time.
Please, sir, we don't have a masquerade mask, but we do have this.
It's a learning moment. That's the important thing, right?
I'm doing that.
You
next
shouldn't
time
let
I
it
DM.
torture you, but it's important that you think about that from time to time, right?
Yeah, I lie awake at night.
No, don't. Well, don't. Try not. I don't know. I have no advice for that. Sorry. Anyway, moving on. Welcome. We're so glad to have you, Mace, and you know, it's great to have the whole gang here. This has been pretty cool. Producer, for anybody wondering, producer Rick's at the command center, so he's there in spirit. He's doing very producer Rick things at the moment.
He's so
right
happy
off
right
screen.
now.
Yeah, I'm sure he is.
He's never been happier.
He's in his element.
He's got a pina colada.
So we just got a question actually from C Crafter, $10 gifted
Thank
super chat. So
you.
thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate your support. The question is, I'm new to D&D games and have just joined a session. I think that I'm accidentally overshadowing everyone else there. Are there any good tricks to help you know when to pull back before anyone gets upset? Great question.
I think that it's being aware of the party and your friends or the other players and what their characters would be good at. And when you think of a really good idea or something that may be more suited for another character to do, say like, what do you think? What do you think? Blah blah blah. And so maybe, I don't know if anyone noticed, but like, you know, I tried to in session 1 and session 0 of Stardust Rhapsody to be like, oh, Dandy, there's some animals around. What do you think about this? Oh, Kavir, you used to run smuggling with Empire Tech. Isn't that wonderful? And, you know, because obviously they're newer players. And so, like, you know, I going out of my way to kind of in character ask for other characters' inputs to try to, and that is also kind of a term of you solving it, putting on your Batman or your Scooby-Doo detective hat, Sherlock Holmes if you're nasty, detective hat, to be like, oh, I'm still solving the problems and still coming up with it, but by doing social interactions and giving, basically almost kind of doing the DM's job for them. I hate to say that, but basically like the idea of saying like, oh, I'm going to help my DM collaboratively and the other players move the spotlight around and share them. That's my favorite way to kind of like help encourage people, and also just make sure that like just because you have an idea or like there's something that your character could do doesn't necessarily mean that your character should do that.
Yeah. Great advice.
I would say utilize the look and pause. So when something happens, look around to see if anyone looks like they're about to say something. Pause and give people the ability to jump in. And if there's silence, feel free to step up. Maybe you're more confident than other people are to start propelling the story forward. And it could be helpful that you're doing that. So do the look and pause, see if anyone else is jumping in to try and say something. And then if nobody is, feel free to talk. And as Mike said, then add in the, you know, what do you think? Or, Do you have anything in your skill set that could solve this issue? I know you're great at this. Those kinds of things I think are awesome.
Well said. Derek, Mace?
I'm happy to jump in. I think that, you mentioned, like, hey, I don't want to feel like I'm overshadowing someone. And I think that oftentimes it's important to kind of be able to tell maybe why they aren't speaking up, like, because it might not necessarily be that you're overshadowing someone or you're cutting someone off. It could be a comfort thing, right? Which could be a whole other kind of like thing to address. Ideally, kind of like Mikey was touching on as well, like a conversation that would happen between the DM and the players and what you're trying to do. Everyone's accomplishing and moving towards the same thing. I think everyone's kind of got it like slam dunked right on the head. Is finding ways to like invite people into the storytelling and then just kind of taking a step back and letting them have the spotlight for a bit. But if it's like, in Andy's favorite TikTok, if, everyone gets cursed with becoming a Muppet and then somebody just doesn't know what Muppets are. Sometimes it's like, it's not about stepping on toes. It's just about, maybe not everyone knows exactly how to move forward in the space that they're in, right? And that's totally okay sometimes.
Well, I also want to give a shout out to Rich. In character, he said you could always be like Animal.
Right.
All he does is scream.
Right, exactly. That's a great point.
And it gave you something to at least sink your teeth onto that led to a really funny and amazing character moment. Because of that interaction and support and inter-party support, so kind of goes.
Nobody laughed when I said "wipe out," though. I felt like that was my crowning achievement.
Sorry.
There's always next time.
I got that in my back pocket.
I feel that it's said. Ben said, if you're feeling like you're dominating the spotlight or you're overshadowing, then finding ways to turn that spotlight back to the other players to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to share is valuable. Valuable skill to learn. Took me a while. I was just piloting my characters, and it was a while before I started realizing, you know what, I should be actively looking for opportunities to elevate the other characters at my table. That was something that really helped me level up as a player. And the more ways that you look for those tools at your table, the better you're going to feel about what you're describing, and also the better you're going to be received as a player. That's extremely valuable. I think the only other thing as a minor tool that could be in your toolkit is if you feel that you need to genuinely sit back and really create a vacuum so that other players jump into the story. Finding ways that your character can be distracted or focused intently on something, or RP the reason why your character isn't giving whatever is happening the full attention that it needs, can at least give folks a justification to be like, oh, they're doing X, we need to come up with the next solution. It depends on the context and the specifics of why you're feeling that way, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
No, that's great. We got a few more questions that we can address. Some of these are not super in-depth answers. So, obviously everybody feel free to have an answer if you have something, to add, but some of these we might be a little rapid fire, which is okay. No worries. We got a question on Patreon. I started DMing after only playing 3 sessions of D&D, and I felt like one of the things I struggled with the most during my session was remembering rules. What I was able to do and what the players could do with their feats and class abilities, etc. There was a lot of time that was there sitting quietly while they looked something up. So what are ways that you have found to maybe help remembering the things, whether it be rules that you need to know or that your players can do, etc., etc.?
How does that work? Even if I think I have an answer to how something works, and I have asked it 3 dozen times before, I will still say, how does it work? Let's refer to the rules.
Yeah.
A unspoken thing about playing Dungeons and Dragons, I think, is that a lot of it is a conversation of what the rules look. Thank you, Rich. Thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of it is a conversation about what the rules interactions should be, or even just making sure that we revisit the rules. I've heard the rules readings for Thorn Whip a million times,
Right.
but I'm still going to say, well, how does that work when it's used almost every time? Because I want to just make sure that we're thinking about all of it. A, it helps me slow down and make sure that I'm making all of my judgment calls 100% of the time. But B, those reps will make you better about remembering certain things and reduce the cognitive load on you if you're constantly revisiting it and just making part of your game a pattern of, we're going to have to, as much of this game as storytelling, we're also going to refer to the rules, because there's a lot. Every single spell is a rule in Dungeons & Dragons. And there's like 260 of them in the base game, something like that. That's technically a rule of the game. That's astronomical. No one should feel forced to memorize all of that information.
Yeah. Good answer.
A
Anyone else?
couple of things for me.
Yes, please.
Anytime that there's a rule that you constantly forget over and over again, write it down, put it on the back of your DM screen. That's one tip.
Nice.
Keep your most forgotten rules in the back of your DM screen, or have a mic where you can go, Mike, what would you do? I do that to him a lot.
Yeah, just get a mic.
The next thing is to remember that as the DM, you're the arbiter of the rules. And in my opinion, if you have the mindset of rule of cool over rules as written, then when those scenarios come up, and because it sounds like in the question, it's specifically not wanting to have to stop the session to look up rules. So if that's the case, then just be like, this is how I'm going to rule it for these reasons. We're going to do it this way. After the session, we can look it up, and next time we might rule it a different way. But kind of establish it with your players that if in session, to keep things going, especially if you're in a tense moment, that you're not going to stop things to look up a rule if you don't have time, or if it's something quick, sure, but I know sometimes you can get into these rabbit holes of trying to figure out, well, how does this rule work? And then with this rule, and then with this rule, sometimes it's okay to say, you know what? Based on what you can do as a player, how this world works, what I think, I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, you can. Or I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't think that that's going to work this way, but it can work this way, and then move on. And it's okay to do that. And hopefully your players will understand. And then afterwards, you look it up, touch base with them and say, hey, looked it up. It looks like we did it right. Or it looks like next time we would rule it this way. And you move on.
Well said.
Anyone else? Great.
Yeah, I think that I'll say something super quick, Andy. I think the thing about the thing about rules is they're not rules, right? They're just guidelines. It's just a chassis for you to be able to tell a cool story in a way that everyone understands how they can interact together. But as long as you have consistency, as long as you kind of know how to approach, never feel like you have to sacrifice like a story moment or the playthrough to get the rules right, because getting the rules right is the bottom on the list of things you want to accomplish. Never let them get in the way of a good time.
I love that. I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Don't be afraid also to say, this is the ruling that we're doing right now.
Right.
We will go and do because sometimes you get into a 25-minute long rules debate. And as a DM, sometimes you have to go, we've got story to tell. We're going to make this call right now, and then we're going to go look up all the internet answers, and we're going to agree about it for the next 4 days, and then we'll do it that way moving forward. But right now, it works like this.
Well, one of the really cool, I mean, this was in the one shot Silver Strand where Chuckles takes out like goes up like 60 feet in the air and like takes out an anvil and drops it on somebody. And I was like, first of all, you son of a bitch, because I don't even come close to knowing the rules to how this functions. But it's extremely creative, super badass. And it should do something very cool. So we're just going to like decide on the fly. Like we could look up, we could crunch the numbers, we could calculate the math. Like I could get the ton weightage of what a traditional anvil would be. But that's like, who the hell cares? Like this is just a really cool moment. Like I want to reward him. This is awesome. Let's give it some punch, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that.
But
lastly,
for people who know the rules of D&D better than we do, how would that work? How does like dropping a super heavy anvil
we'll
on
have to see if we can
someone?
get some calculations from people in chat. What I will say,
I would simulate it as fall damage. An anvil weighs about as much as a person.
the last thing I'll say regarding this that nobody mentioned is in the early days we had Rich as our rules guy. He still acts as our rules guy, but it helps to have somebody at the table, even if it's not your DM, having a player who knows what they're doing, and it's okay as the DM to consult them. You know, do we always look to Rich? Rich, how does this work? Do you recall how this works?
I still do that, right? Well, you know, when I DM, if there's like a debate between like at the party about how a rule works, I'm like, Richie, how does it work? And whatever he says, I'm like, okay. And if I don't know, I'm like, Richie, how does it work? Okay. And whatever he says, I'm like, okay, that's how we're doing it. No more arguing.
He kind of acts as our arbiter.
Yes.
And Mikey's my lore book.
Yes, that's right.
Mikey, how does this? Does this character know this? Would they have any idea? I don't know. Help.
Mikey is my. What kind of role would you do for this, Mike?
This is actually another question from Gigi as well. I'm picking on them again because they're asking nice, sweet questions.
Thank you.
Is what are some tips for making memorable and fun NPCs? Because this is going to segue very nicely into our next point of conversation. So, what are some ways as a first-time DM that maybe you can spice up your NPCs and make them memorable?
Pick a quirk.
Ooh.
Quirks make people interesting. You're less likely to remember the beautiful picture-perfect elf that just walked through the city and acted like the popular girl than you are to remember the duck who had his diploma stolen from him and is now an alcoholic and suffering.
It's no
Tragedy.
Or a brownie who is afraid she's gonna go full boggart and likes to lick toads. Give them something that's you don't see very often, and that's something you can lean on and play with. Make them goofy, make them silly, forgetful, old. There are many things you can do to make them impactful. But that's my
physical characteristics fit in that too. Having a unique language unit. That's a very dry way of saying it, but a thing that you always recognize about this person first. They have a tuft of white shock hair across the top of their head. They have a scar. They have a facial piercing. They have a very broad chest and a barrel body. They have some one thing where the next time you meet that NPC, you recognize a scar on the face of the person that's walking through the door, and you realize that it's such and such, and everyone goes, "Oh, I recognize, I see the thing." That is an effective way to create patterns. People are very good at picking up patterns if you create patterns, and so having a consistent way to refer to them that isn't just the voice. A smell. Oh, you smell rosemary.
Imagine the smell.
Stop.
I just imagined Nestor.
I was trying to do a Witcher 3 thing, and you took it in a different direction, and now it's alchemy up in here.
Yeah, it is. It smells like alchemy. I think that something, as far as like something that's super actionable, is just think of your favorite characters from fiction, and think of for like this kind of character, like what character that I love, for this character, this NPC, what character that I love is fitting in this scenario, and just kind of think about how they would act and how they would talk, even if you're not doing an impression, and like, you know, you're not gonna, and just act like them, and don't tell them your party what you're doing, and through the translation of you just taking the character and acting like that, they're probably not gonna figure it out, and even if they are, they're like, oh, I know that thing, that's pretty neat. And so to me, that's a very easy way to just kind of just quickly pull an interesting, memorable character where effectively all of the work has been done for you, and you can easily pull it in your head in the characterization. You don't need to build it and build up this whole character from scratch and do all of that in your head. Just kind of take and borrow from your favorite works of fiction in your home game.
And to jump in on that really quickly too, take an emotion. One of people's favorite NPCs was the piece of shit cicada. He was just an asshole. That was his entire personality. He was just an asshole. But you remember him.
That's right.
You also have the completely dry, it's no mirage, it's an almirage. Like that, that is one of the most throwaway NPCs ever, but you remember them because it was so out of place and it was just monotone and dry.
I can fix her.
Or Sad Kid Duncan. Or Riata Flog. Like you can create an entire NPC off of just an emotion.
Riata Flog is the one that got away.
I will say two caveats in all of this, which is I don't think that it can be forced. do everything you can to make memorable characters, but for player character reasons or for player reasons, whether or not a character becomes loved or how they are going to be interacted with by the party is not wholly under your control. I don't think that there is a skeleton key to just being like, I'm going to have a twig in my campaign, and everyone's going to love her because she's cute and great. That may be your version of it, but once it meets the enemy, it could be a totally different scenario. The context could be totally different. Who knows? Sure. Let that fly. Let it fly, however it goes.
Great points. We got another question from Benjamin. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. We really appreciate your support. Thank you. The question is, how do you balance a character that is way more powerful than the rest of the other players?
A player character in the party being way more powerful?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Well,
so
don't be afraid. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to preface this, right? I think at least, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Benjamin, but some classes do start off more powerful than others, right? And it takes time for them to kind of catch up, right? Yeah. So, maybe you have someone playing an Arthurcana Mystic.
I think
here's what I'd say. Level 12 and forward, I was underpowered compared to the rest of the party. I tapped out.
I think something, not necessarily maybe we take for granted, but I think something we do differently than a lot of normal players of D&D is we don't roll our stats, right? We use the Avantris array. So it's also very possible, like in a home game, that you end up with a character that starts off with just like spikes, just crazy, 18s all the way across the board, and then you end up with someone who's got like some negative stats, right? And if you live with that, then suddenly it's kind of like, oh, how do I balance combat around some of that? And I think like our answer has become the Avantris array, right? Like we have a very specific allocation of stats that we apply to every player character that we roll out. That's maybe like, moderately to a little bit higher than it would be normally or under like casual circumstances. But some of that is to be able to tie us into the heroic fantasy of feeling fate touched, feeling powerful, and being on the same platform, right? Because like it doesn't feel great. Like if somebody just rolls and they're all excited because they spike like a bunch of big stats, and then you go and you just get dumpstered like every single time, and you're like, oh man, well I really love this character, but now they just suck.
Right. I will say very quickly to clarify what you're saying, Mace. You referenced the Avantris array. That's our standard array. It's the selection before you add any additional traits or features or whatever that might change your ultimate character sheet. It's the standard array, but ours is a little tweaked to tell the kind of stories that we prefer to tell.
Yeah. I think that if it's based on, if the overpower is based on stats and randomize and rolling stats, I personally think that kind of imbalance is horseshit, and it feels bad. Especially if, I'm as a class, like, I chose to be a barbarian or a monk or a paladin or any of the MAD, right? MAD? And multi-attribute dependent classes. Yep. Where you need 3 attributes to be good. Meanwhile, I picked a rogue, I have high dex, I got 1 high stat, that's all I need, right? Where, or a wizard, all I need is intelligence. And so if it's based on basically stats and randomization and or MAD versus, SAD classes or subclasses, that to me should be very easily fixed of just saying, hey, like you player who rolled like shit or whatever, like let's kind of adjust the stats. Right. Obviously, if they're playing like a fucking D&D wiki subclass, you brought this upon yourself. No, I'm kidding.
But also not.
But also not. But also
no,
not.
But actually, yes.
No, but actually, yes. Where, if it's something that's, I homebrewed this thing or whatever. Also, if it was based on magical custom items or whatever, feel free to subsequently nerf a magical item that you gave that was more powerful than you realized, and balance on the fly. There's no reason why you can't do that. I almost made a spicy joke, and I'm not going to.
And my response to that is actually, Mikey kind of led me into it really easily, was artifacts, vestiges.
Mm.
Some classes just aren't as good as others. Like, bottom line, some are just not great. And they can be made to be great in certain situations. But what I have found is, at least at our table, we pick the things that we pick for thematic reasons. And I didn't want anyone to feel like they couldn't live the fantasy of their character because they were locked in to the way that character plays, or that, the fact that they were playing a ranger. And so I created items that I could level up with the players and balance them so that everyone could kind of fill the niche that they wanted to fill, do the thing that they wanted to do, and fill in any gaps that their class or their stats weren't allowing them to fill. And that way, that could kind of keep them equal. And in some cases, we are okay. Luckily, we are okay with some people being more powerful than other people. And sometimes we've got someone who, you're our damage dealer, you're our healer, you're our sword and shield. And so you buff those things up and make everyone feel a little bit special and a little bit powerful, and no one's overshadowing anybody else, but still gets to keep their vision for their character. So that's my advice.
A great way to do that is with the Artifacts of Anathema, 26 upgradable items available in the Crooked Moon. Become a VIP today to unlock amazing perks, including a Chuckles VIP pin and a Honk Legion mini expansion.
I need to change my background. What is this?
That's right. We need to make Crooked Moon backgrounds for
I'm
future
going to tattoo on my forehead. I'm going to be the cringe Joker, but instead of damage, just going to see the crookedmoon.com.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's
Yikes.
incredible.
Yikes.
We've got another question. And another. First, I want to thank new member Shannon. Thank you so much. Who is also the person who asked the question at a $10 super chat. So thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. Shannon's question is it easier to try and be the narrator / ref as compared to telling a story? I'm looking into doing a one-off for my small group, but I'm unsure how to properly DM.
If you figure out how to properly DM, let me know. I'm still trying to unlock that myself.
There is no wrong way to DM. I actually saw an interesting video, I can't remember what channel it was, of basically the Gary Gygax and Matt Mercer dichotomy. Basically how in the original old school way of playing D&D that it was not the DM's role to tell a story, it was simply as the referee to basically do the consequences of the actions. And now it's a lot more narrative. We here at Avantris, we strongly recommend focusing on on telling a story collaboratively with your friends. That is the hobby that we've fallen in love with. That is how we view the hobby. But it is not the only way to play tabletop RPGs, especially Dungeons and Dragons. But I think that if you have a story in your heart and your friends want to tell the story, focusing on that narrative and that story will make everyone have a very good time. We personally believe, at least I personally believe. And I think that you'll realize that it's a lot easier than you think. That's what I've
played both ways, where we've played the narrative approach, and I've also played the full referee role as a DM. I don't know how much I've done that on stream. I guess perhaps Kobold Storm would be the closest to me being just total referee. But the point of that is that even after refereeing, you will still have a story to tell. That is the false equivalence between those two things, is that if something exciting happens because there's an amazing dice roll, or because someone makes a tactical choice and does one thing that is truly an achievement, or has some tragic fall, it's hold on. Okay. It's the game will help tell you help you tell the story as much as your approach to DMing, and that there's no wrong way to do it.
Mike.
Love that. So thank you so much again for that generous super chat. And we have a tip from Adam.
Thank you.
$6.90. Perfect Thank you. Much appreciated. 6.9.
Thank you. Thank you very
Adam
much.
asks, what is your DM setup like? How do you organize your notes? Do you use tech? Why don't we... Who hasn't spoken? I'll start. I have an ironing board. Not anymore. We threw it out.
Damn.
But I used to have an ironing board. And on that ironing board, I tried to keep as little things as possible. But basically, the tech that I use is a single Google... For every session of D&D that I play, I have a Google Doc that basically has bullet points for the general cadence of the session that I planned, as well as overarching notes as far as the vibe, the theme, the features of the location that they're in, NPC names, and general stuff. And then I have note cards of any stat blocks that I will be using to run combat, pre-prepared, in front of me, and then beyond that, it's just your standard DM fare, dice, initiative cards, and all of that. So that is my DM setup.
Mine is very similar because I just stole Mikey's and he taught me how to DM.
That's right.
But I have an iPad in the same way. I use a pretty singular doc that has kind of like a brief outline of things I wanted to hit on, and like super bold. It'll be like, do this here. Obviously, we try and put out something that everybody can enjoy. So like I'll have very like bolded sections as I go. It says like, when you make this transition, like change the music to this. So I kind of dummy proof it as much as I possibly can, which is necessary. I also have the combat post-it cards kind of like ready to go, ready to like launch if things break out. I usually also just keep a notebook in front of me because for whatever reason, like I like the iPad, I like the screen to kind of like help direct where I'm drawing things, but I like to take hand notes as things come up, or if the players do something that's like really important or I really want to be able to tie to later, like I'll jot down like quick follow-up notes, and then I use the actual notebook to like track combat oftentimes, like monster health, hit, whatever else I could possibly want to take a look at through that. So I think the only addition is just a little notebook.
I want to jump in because Mace really did learn from the best. He got the approval of the creator of Avantris, actually.
Unbelievable.
He learned from the best, and I yes, the notebook is very critical for tracking monster HP and also writing down dumb shit that your players come up with and making sure so you can stay. So there was an example of when we played Prime, for all three of you who've seen it, in the most recent arc where they all came up with pseudonyms or aliases. I wrote down and was referring to them as their elf pseudonyms or whatever. And so little things like that.
What were they?
I have no idea. I have fucking no idea. Or when you come up or when you have to improvise something on the fly, make sure you write it down of a name or a detail. That's something that's really, really fucking critical, because there have been times where I haven't written it down and I'm like, oh, fuck. Yep. And we're fortunate that I can just go back and watch a recording. I don't want to, but I will if I have to. Where if you're not recording your sessions, then make sure you write it down or say, well, look, guys, I forgot. I'm sorry. And then just come up with something else. The other thing I wanted to say that's super huge DM tip is music as far as tech.
Yes.
As far as...
You stole my shit.
Combat, music sets the tone and does a ton of work for you for theme. But for combat... have a combat playlist or songs picked out that have a high BPM, because if you want combat to go quickly and you have a song that's ha 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 ha, it will take literally twice as slow. I promise you. If you have a high BPM song, your players will actually take their turns quicker, and I promise you that's the case, and that is so critical for running combat efficiently.
I'm going to jump in real quick, just before anybody else goes. Don't give away all of your tips and tricks, because that's going to be a heavy portion of part 3 of this whole series. Ooh. But, if it relates to the question, feel free to give a little bit of it. But, save some of those hints and tips and tricks for next week. Continue. Whoever else would like to continue answering if you haven't yet.
Music was my shit, so I'll add to the notes piece, which is when I sit down to prepare a session, I write it in the same way that you would read it in a prepared module. That isn't something that everyone has the time to do or the interest to do, but it is. I'm just being honest, the way that I am, it's part of my ritual to get into the game, that I have to sit down, because that's how I started at the very beginning. I read modules, and then I thought of the way that I wanted my thing to go, and I wrote it in kind of sort of the same way, using kind of sort of the same language, using you find a trap, and you have to make a DC 15 bloody blue in order to such and such. Like that, I write that down, and that's part of my notes. I've never... never is not the right word, but the times that I have DM'd where I have a single page of outlines, very rarely do I feel like I've had as successful as an evening, as opposed to me doing that level of prep work. Every DM preps differently, and knowing what the right amount of notes going in for you is about reps and learning about yourself and being prepared to ask the hard questions about what you really need to get the cognitive load off of your mind to know how to run the entire fucking universe. Because you're the entire universe.
Well said. Did anyone else would like to contribute to this question?
Yeah, for me, it's two things. Color code stuff, because I have ADHD, so I need to be able to pick things out really quickly. And like checklists. Instead of having huge walls of text, because I'll just get lost in them, I have a sheet of paper next to me, and before every session, I'll sit down and I will do little bullet points of, this is the first thing, then it goes from here, from here, from here, from here, maybe a couple of sub-bullet points with pertinent information. It should all fit on one sheet, and I will actually just cross those out as we get through them, so I can quickly look down and be like, okay, this is where we're going. Those are my tips.
Well said. We actually got a massive $20 super chat from Josh.
Whoa! Thank you.
Thank
Big
you
question.
so much.
I'm going to read the question out, and then I'm going to take 2 minutes to walk off screen. So it's up to producer Rick to keep all of you clowns in line while I step away.
Mace, let's go out of control. He can't get to us here. We're safe.
If he never reads the question, he can never keep us in line.
If I don't read the question, I'll never be gone. The question is, hey guys, this weekend, Mike's going to lose his mind. I'm going to be running my group through the Crooked House, an intro into the world of Edge of Midnight. Is there anything you guys could give me insight into in terms of running the land of Druskenwald? I'm going to let the group take over. Please, take turns. Don't, make sure you share. We're all friends here. Don't hog the spotlight. And I'll be back in like a minute. Okay. Good luck.
Okay.
I feel like this is too easy for me to take. This is I gotta let somebody else take it.
I feel like this is a Nikki question.
I don't know if you know. Do you know that we're launching a Kickstarter soon? The Crooked Moon, a folklore supplement for 5th edition, is launching this October. And it is part of the Crooked Moon is a setting guide for the land of Druskenwald. And there are tons and tons and tons of things. Nikki, take it away.
No, by all means. Continue, Mike.
Don't forget they're running this session this weekend, which is not in October.
Oh. Well, only Nikki can help you there.
I agree. Only Nikki.
Yeah,
only
I
Nikki
agree.
is equipped to answer this question.
Only Nikki can answer this question and stop forest fires.
What I would say about running a campaign in Druskenwald is to focus on the things that can't be seen. It is a world of night. So I highly suggest that you talk to your players beforehand about the use of magic, or about the use of darkness. Yes, in D&D it says that with dark vision you can see in shades of gray. Get their buy-in to get rid of that. Having to deal with things in the dark is so much fun, and it allows for you to create that spookiness. Try to think about any room you're going through in the Crooked House, anything that you're doing. When you walk into that room, or when you're narrating them walk into that room, think about the things that could happen in there that would freak you out and describe that to them. Remember that in this place, it doesn't work the way the material plane would work. So you have a lot more freedom to be creative and add your own things to this world, because it is a realm of death and it doesn't live by the same rules. So utilize darkness, play with emotions, play on sounds, smells, utilize all of the senses. As we know in the Crooked House, there are rooms for each of them. So utilize that. And
Sweat room.
Get their buy-in to make things dark without the utilization of magical darkness.
So on top of what Nikki said and everything I covered regarding Andy's social security number, mother's maiden name, and street that he grew up on.
And a list of Andy's fears.
And a list of his fears and his
Joke's on you, I have none.
So on top of that, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that. I think I got somebody else.
I have nothing to add as a DM of Druskenwald, except for how it feels to be a player in Druskenwald, inhabiting a character. Something that is important to focus on is that you know that there's terror over here. The journey to terror is so important. The tension and unease and dread that that saturates the land of Druskenwald is something to think about, how much dominant that should be part of your adventure. It will be easy to deflate the balloon by having combat every 5 seconds. It's got to be intentional. It'll be easy to have the big scary thing, the violent thing, the mature horrifying thing show up and go, that's terror. You want to get there. But unease is the name of the game, and Nikki is a master at it. The best example I can give you is, and I'll vividly remember this for the rest of my life, we're playing Edge of Midnight, and we're doing overland travel, and we find a few clues of something not quite right, something that's causing unease, causing tension, and there's like a farmhouse, and the entire party looks at each other and goes, we're just gonna walk past that house. The door's open, it's like dark inside, we're not going inside that. Fucking no one could pay us to go inside that house. If your players are treating the elements of your story in the same way where it's like, I don't want to touch that, I do not want, then you've achieved the same emotional space as where I was in Druskenwald.
Yeah,
I
would
guess
say
I'll
the
continue.
only thing I would add, because everyone's. Oh, sorry, Mike. Were you gonna say something?
No, go ahead, Mace. I'll hold my point.
Mine's easiest, Craig. The only thing I'd say is everyone's got like a movie or a show or a book that scared them, right? Like something like that. Like rewatch it, check it out, and try and kind of be honest with yourself and really introspect as to what is making you afraid of it, right? Is it how the music builds up at certain moments? Is it how like things are so uncertain? And I think like Nikki really hit it on the head with it's almost like you're not trying to scare people as much as you're trying to make them incredibly uneasy. And I like, if you're gonna watch anything, watch Edge of Midnight back, and you know, like there was a part of Stardust Rhapsody where I really wanted to do some like gross shit and kind of build like a little bit of fear and build a little tension. And I'll give you some spoilers. When I try to figure out like how best to do that, I rewatched Edge of Midnight and saw what Nikki did to be fucking gross and weird and scary, and I was like, oh, perfect, I'll just do that. And that's where we ended up. So
well said.
Watch Edge of Midnight.
And presuming that you are running your adventure based on what was seen in Edge of Midnight, you will be in the province of Fulsense. Reminding kind of a big theme of that province was kind of was hysteria. and that there was just, besides all the spooky monsters and witches and hags and all of that, a massive, massive, massive threat was how the average everyday humans responded to that, and how absolutely out of control the human heart and mind can become with a little bit of prompting and a little bit of the mob mentality, right? So mob mentality and mass hysteria are amazing themes to tap in on, and like feeling that the threat is from the average everyday peasants that most D&D parties are trying to save, that they're actually one of the biggest threats that the party's facing. That's just fucking scary.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to run a campaign in an entirely new, never-before-seen setting, the Valley of Wickermore Hollow will be featured, the entire valley, the entire setting, in the Crooked Moon, coming to Kickstarter this October. You can become a VIP now and earn amazing, amazing perks. So we really encourage you that you do that.
Well said.
So, I was going to go before Mike, so I want to get this in before
Please, I wasn't here, so I didn't mean to cut anybody off.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Go ahead.
It's one of the things that I've discovered about running horror, because it's my favorite thing to DM. It is something that is contrary to what you would do running any other genre in D&D. Do not explain yourself. So with like running Witchlight, if there is a noise and they're like, ooh, what was that? As a DM, you'll normally say, oh, well, as you look further, or roll a perception, or figure these things out, and you give them the clues to figure out what made that noise. In horror, don't do that. You have to leave those things open-ended. You hear this. That is just what it is. And it's getting louder. It's coming closer to you. You can roll a perception. You're still just going to get that information because you don't know. And so it feels very against what you would normally do as a DM, but hide more things.
Well said. Well said. We received just so much support. This is very quickly becoming the questions episode, and I am so here for it. It makes my job infinitely easier. So we're going to work our way through these amazing super chats. I just want to real quick shout them out, and then we'll work through the questions. Brian with the $20 super chat. We got Aaron with the $10 super chat, and Sloth with ADHD with the $50 super chat.
Sloth,
unbelievably generous.
You. All of you, y'all are
you.
Amazing, unbelievable. Thank you.
We couldn't do this without you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, especially in light of recent events. And we're going to work through these questions. So we're going to be here, and I'm very excited to keep answering these questions. Brian asks, or says, my friend and I ran into Mikey and Richie at PAX Unplugged on the last day. Great guys. My question is outside of D&D. Any plans to play any other systems like Pathfinder 2e or Starfinder? Love you all. We love you too. I'm so bummed that I had to leave PAX Unplugged early, so I missed the chance to meet you, or I would have met you as well. And I second that Mike and Rich are great guys.
Thoughts? It was great to meet you, and that means you met us on our birthday. Shared birthday. Right. The last day of PAX Unplugged was our birthday, so what a great treat to meet you, a great birthday present for me and Rich. And I'm sure, and it was delightful to meet you as well. So thank you.
We've gotten this question a few times, and our answer is always the same. It's never say no, never say never, right? We are very much a D&D stream. We've played Powered by the Apocalypse once on stream, and we had some feelings about that. I recently played Pathfinder 2e at Gen Con in Dice Cream Sandwich's live show. We are always looking and paying attention to other systems and seeing what they can offer and bring to the table. But we are, for now, primarily a D&D 5e stream. And like I said, never say never. No plans, but never say never. Thank you again so much for your support.
Thank you so much. That's a great answer, Andy.
$10 again from Aaron. Asked the question, I'm making my first homebrew campaign for my friends, and I have no idea where to really start. Like, do I go with characters or world building / lore first? This could probably be a 15-hour question in and of itself. And I do want everyone to feel free to take as much time as you want to answer this. I couldn't even begin to know where to crack this nut. So feel free, DMs, all of you, to offer up as much advice as you possibly can about where to begin with your homebrew world. The only thing I'll add before we answer the question is that we did do an episode of Neon Knights about world building, and we kind of touched the surface of this question. Again, it could be a 15 and 20 hour chat. And with that, I release the question unto our DMs.
I will go first because it was the best advice that I've ever been given. It was from Michael right over here. This guy.
Michael, how could
This
you?
chucklefuck.
How could you?
Oh, wow.
Start with your big bad, the super issue, and work your way down. Start with what is the ending threat at the very end of your campaign, the thing that it all distills to in the end, and work backwards. And that, for me, was the thing that has unlocked so many creative opportunities in my brain. I think about every single time I work on a session, anything that I do, I think about that, and it is the best advice. So go forth and create.
Well said.
I agree. I
Here's
think
the
that
key.
there's a counter that we have for a specific word, and rather than give that answer, which I'll let anyone else tackle, I will say that there is a very valuable amount of reward working backwards, not just from your big bad, but from what generally the sessions should be overall. Do you think that you're going to play this campaign in 20 sessions, 40? Have a number in mind. I think that we can get this done because we're playing once a week in a year. There's 52 sessions. Maybe we miss a few, so let's say 40 again. Having a calendar in mind and working backwards from there will help you start to outline, because you're going to have all these different ideas and you're going to go, what fits where? What should they encounter here? When should they level? How should they, are there going to be arcs to the campaign? Are there going to be character moments? If you've got 5 players, is each one of them going to have a spotlight session where we really dig in and find out about their personal past? The 10-page backstory that they handed you finally pays off 6 months later. Having a general outline in terms of what sessions and what happens where, I would recommend. It's a healthy exercise before you even start actually playing to do that. Eventually things will change because you're going to be a flexible DM, and that's really important. But having that going in will make sure that you cut away a lot of the fat, that you are playing an efficient game, that you go straight to the story. So much of what I'm doing in Icebound ended up on the cutting room floor because I made that reverse calendar, and I would recommend it to any DM. But also to your point, Andy, yeah, we could do a three-parter. How to write a campaign would be great.
And I bet we will.
I'm going to fundamentally disagree with Derek there. And
Whoa.
Just another day that ends in Y.
And so my advice as Mikey is to not do anything he just said, and to not. I think that's a helpful exercise. But what I think that to answer the question is to start. I feel like that trying to time it and pace it and think about sessions and hours and not wasting your friend's time will be overwhelming, and it will get you to the point where you're putting the cart before the horse. And so I would start with the story first before you think about how you're actually going to execute it in the world of gaming and rolling dice and telling stories together. And so basically is echoing what Nikki said. And so in the terms of thinking about your overall narrative that you're trying to tell first, and that can start with the conflict, right? Basically, all good story comes from conflict. And figure out what that conflict is. And in heroic fantasy, in games of TTRPGs, it usually is there's a big bad, and there's going to be a big boss fight. Start with that, and figure out what the overall, and we talk about theme, right? Theme is the number one thing that you think about. But think about the overarching story first before you get into the nitty gritty. That's where I always recommend you start. And then obviously, then you can go in and do all of the stuff that Derek was talking about.
Isn't that what I just said?
Well, I would say that you got to take a lot of stuff first before you think about actual calendar and executing and playing it. And also, I also would not necessarily, I would say letting a story breathe instead of kind of putting in like a super tight thing. If it's just a game with your friends, like, you know, it's a good exercise as far as like we have we're playing one session a month and we're streaming it and it's content and that sort of thing. But letting a story breathe, I think can allow you to be a gardener and kind of let things grow organically. But if you do want to add the structure, that's a great thing. So I don't mean like throw all that out. I'm sorry, I'm being a little cheeky. But my point being is that starting with the story first and foremost, before you get, and then the world building should only come from the story you're trying to tell. The characters should start from the story that you're trying to tell. It should all come to what is the narrative you're trying to drive, and having that be your starting point, and everything else ladders up from up to there.
Well said. Who's next? Mace.
Mikey kind of hit what I was gonna say towards the end there, where I think that echoing everybody, right? Like it's you really have to begin. The story is the most important piece, right? Like hands down. Everything else is window dressing. Everything else can be changed, adapted, shifted around, like at your discretion, at your desire to keep up with what you want to accomplish as your plan changes over time, right? But ultimately, you want to know where you're going and what the point of it all is, right? And then kind of like the second you have that, like, that just tiny, tiny crystal of like a glimpse of your North Star in the distance, everything kind of explodes out all at once. And it's like, well, now I need somewhere for them to start, right? And it looks like this planet, and it looks like this tavern, and they're going to go down this road, and they might meet this people, right? All this stuff kind of like start your world building as you're shaping the story, as you're adding in these additional layers. But it all begins with what's the piece that you're building towards. And then you start to chunk out a lot of things along the way, right? But I think that this to me kind of like falls back into that rules piece, right? Is like, you almost can't, like, you can't create too much going in, because the whole idea is to create this like open, not that like, you know, anything goes and nothing matters and you're not heading in a direction, but you want to be able to provide enough autonomy for your players to shape the story as much as you are. And if you do that, then you know, you have to be able to bake in room for that, and you need to leave a lot of that space open. And so, you know, I think that to answer the question, it begins in the end.
I have one more point.
Gross.
In that I'm going to fundamentally disagree with everything Mace just said.
All right, well, he's retired, so.
Are you actually going to, Mike? No, you're kidding. Okay.
No. I will say that if you can choose between railroading and sandbox, railroad. If you have to choose between one or the other.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I agree with that.
Okay.
That's what I said.
So we've got more questions. I'm gonna keep churning through these questions as long as we can,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you so much for your generous support. We love you guys.
I'm gonna keep shouting everybody out. But I do want to just say that, like, I wrote a script last week, right? I write a script every week for Neo Knights. We got through less than half of what I wrote in part one. Tonight we got through an additional 2%. We're going to be on this topic for the next 6 years. I hope everybody's ready. Buckle up, because we're not going anywhere.
See, what you need to do is you need to think about how many of these episodes you want to do about this topic, and then work backwards from there and create an outline.
Stop.
Yeah.
I know where you live, Derek. Careful.
You don't know where I live.
Do you?
Wouldn't you like to know? Anyway, we're moving.
Do you have a list of my fears?
The
I
panic
do.
in his
I
voice
do.
when he said, "Do you?"
Next question. Sloth with ADHD, as we mentioned previously. Not a question, which is okay. I just wanted to say that I can't wait for the Crooked Moon. I've been writing notes on character ideas. My notepad looks like some Lovecraftian asylum patient that delved into the unknown. Thank you for the comment. You are the most creative comment and gifter that we get, and I love it every time. Thank you, Sloth. We appreciate it.
Thank you. That's very kind.
I also want to say, Sloth, I think you're really going to enjoy our wizard subclass.
Ooh,
so
that's a spicy
Sloth was in my mind as I was noodling, initially on the ideation of the wizard subclass. So I think that Sloth particularly will really enjoy.
Write that down.
Yeah.
I'm so fucking excited about this, what we have to share, because we've shared what feels like so much and we've barely scratched the surface.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a fingernail on the wall of that asylum cage. I'm telling you.
That's right. I guess for a VIP check, we are 46 away.
46 away. So
We are
can
so
still hit
close.
it. We just have an hour and 15 minutes. Can we get 46 VIPs in an hour? And I also want to give an update. I don't know if you guys have seen in the Crooked Moon VIP Discord, we are doing a poll to see which subclass we reveal when we hit 3,500.
What are the choices?
It's Monk, Bard, Wizard, and Barbarian. And it has been a brutal fight between... I mean, it was close for a while between the Monk, the Bard, and the Wizard. Now the Monk and the Bard are neck and neck, and they are slugging it out. So I have no idea who's going to pull ahead. I have no idea who's going to pull ahead.
Monk.
I don't want to throw my vote out there because it might
never mind. I
sway
take it back.
It might
Don't
sway
let me
the
sway
thing,
you.
but
And the
Monk is
Wizard may
also
pull
my
ahead.
favorite.
Who knows? The Wizard is still within spitting distance. The Barbarian got dumpstered. Barbarian got fucked. Completely dumpstered.
the Monk
Fourth
is
place.
back.
They don't know. They don't know what they're missing out on the Barbarian.
Where is this
Monk.
poll? Can we see the poll?
It's in the
It's
VIP. It's in the VIP Discord.
Oh, you know
Mace.
what? You're probably not
It's
in
an
there,
announcement.
Mace, are
No,
you?
I'm in it.
You're
Come
not.
on.
I don't think
I
you
am.
are.
I'm right here.
I'm gonna check.
If you're not a mod, you have to rename yourself Poor Mace. That's the
You're
rule.
not a part. Oh yeah, you are a part of the party.
Yeah,
I forgot I gave
okay.
you powers. I
Thank
granted
you.
you powers.
Okay.
The Monk and the Barbarian. Well, I mean, all of the classes are unbelievable, but I think that the Monk is my personal favorite. But I think that people will lose their minds if they see the Barbarian. Will lose their minds. There's gonna be some things that Tetris
No,
when the
all of a
Barbarian is
sudden,
revealed.
they're still Tetrising that hasn't happened yet. That's
I'm
what
telling you.
I'm
been
I'm
responding.
going insane.
I've been responding to the emails for the quick question emails, and I have gotten a few emails that have had theories about things at the Crooked Moon, and people's wheels, their cogs are turning.
You got to start sending me that stuff. I want to hear it. As soon as somebody does the thing, I want to know.
The Discord, I'm telling you, when we drop the Barbarian, the Discord is going to explode. I'm calling it now. I'm calling it now. Next question. We've got a question from Maury. The question, it says not a question. Sorry, I misspoke. And a little late, but happy 2 years sober, Mike. I heard on a VOD and I cheered, and I know I'm just an internet stranger, but I'm proud of you. That was a very kind comment.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much. Yeah, August 16th was my 2-year anniversary. So it's 2 years sober. So thank you very much for the kind words. And here's to 3 years.
Yeah, seconded. I love that, man. I'm proud of you too. I always like to root for you, and I hope I'm vocal in my rooting for you, and I hope that I come across that way. A couple of shout outs for Shannon. Again, thank you so much for the super chats. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. And as of right now, that is all the questions. We've gotten some member for 1 month messages, which is kind of like, I guess, like a resub on Twitch, which is pretty cool. So thank you so much for those kind messages. We appreciate your continued support as well here. Thank you. Now, we're kind of getting close to the end, and I have a question that I really wanted to ask everybody, because I think that it will stir up some really good conversation. It's Avantris deep lore, and I think it's some good stuff. And so maybe what we'll do is we'll end with this question, and then I'm sure that we'll get some more comments and things coming in as we go. And that way we can use this question as kind of a way to slowly move towards the end here and ease our way into the end. And then I'll interject with any questions that we receive. Please feel free to be as long-winded about this as possible. I have to be honest, when I created this question, it was before I had knowledge that Mace was going to be here, and I originally intended on asking it last week. So if Mace has ever seen this, maybe you can chime in a different way. But I wanted to talk about the very first time that we ever streamed.
Ooh.
And there are a lot of people in Avantris who will probably think that I'm referencing streamed episode 1 of Prime.
Trial of the Bear.
The Trial of the Bear, right. I am not. There is a previous date that we streamed many moons ago, and I think that was probably Mike's first time on stream DMing. And that's why I bring it up, because even all of the times that we talk about the first time that that all of our DMs DM'd, Who wants to set the scene on this?
I will.
Because it is.
Yeah,
Please,
you
please.
tell it best, Nikki.
It was the autumn of 20. And we were around a table ruined by cosplay, all drinking, most of us, in our old apartment. And we were streaming on my old laptop. Actually, the laptop that Mike has been using for work lately.
Yeah.
We had it set up on the back of a leather chair. No, it was a leather chair.
A chair.
It was just sitting there, propped up, so that we could kind of see everybody at a strange angle. We all were young and fresh-faced, and some of us were mages, some of us were hunters. I had created an overlay in Photoshop using just color blocks and font. And it was on my old cosplay channel, which made it even more interesting. It wasn't even on legendsofavantris.com or Legends of Avantris on Twitch. It was on my cosplay page on Twitch.
Yeah.
And I think we had max we got to 3 viewers, and we were so excited. I think we had someone named Blaziken who was there for the majority of it, who was just role playing along with us. And
Blaziken, he was the only chatter, and he was role playing. He was doing text role play about what he was doing in the session as well.
Yeah.
Blaziken, I wonder where you are. If you ever see this,
We'll
never forget you, Blaziken.
Never forget you, Blaziken.
We'll never forget you.
Popped in not that long ago, years after that first session.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I want to say
lighting-
it was 3 years ago.
He was
lighting
truly
was
a
horrible.
trailblaziken. I mean,
Yeah, Trailblazer
That's
again.
really funny.
Our lighting was horrible.
Thank you.
We hadn't fully replaced all of the light bulbs, so it was really dark. It was really grainy. We were using the mic on the laptop, so you could hear some of us a lot better than others. And Mike was on his ironing board, my ironing board, that he stole.
You can see my really nice calves the entire time.
Mike, do you remember the session that it was? Do you remember?
That was the salmon cave.
No, the
That was-
Salmon Cave was on this channel. Or no, it was on your channel. Oh, that's right. We
Our
put it up.
very first session
that's right.
was the salmon cave.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
We
No,
spent
please. No,
we
go.
spent 6 hours deciding whether we were going into a cave.
Yeah, and I think that it's one of those things where, if you think, obviously, we do this. Many of us are doing this professionally now, but obviously we didn't start as professionals. And if you're like, oh man, my party's not like X, or my party's the level of stories that I think that we personally achieve here, right? Pretty good. But you go back and you watch that when it was just a home game and we still streamed. 90% of the conversation was out of character. And it was entirely talking about how to tactically enter a cave.
Yes.
In the most tactical way. That's us,
So-
Legends of
Yeah.
Avantris, right?
So as of 2019, we still had access to it, and all of us were in the apartment, Kelsey and my apartment, right, when we lived close to you guys, and we tried to watch it. And I
it
think
was
we
uncomfortable.
got 45 minutes in, and not a single
Nothing
thing had
got done.
happened. So
No.
we quit. We stopped watching.
Yep.
Yeah.
We couldn't even watch ourselves.
We were not funny. People say to us all the time, you guys are so funny. We weren't. When we first started, there was nothing. I mean, we had some funny moments, but it was so much of, well, okay, but so it's 60 feet ahead of us. Okay, but we're back here. We're behind the bushes. Yeah. Okay. Well, if Vandris goes over there, no, he can't. Okay, so he should go. But should Rodek go here? That's what we did for 6 hours.
It was very tactical.
And it was one of those things where it's it's as real D&D, folks, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, everybody's got to start somewhere, and I think that it goes to show how much we've grown as people and D&D players and, and storytellers. And, that was a wild experience. And I wonder where Blaziken is now,
Oh, I'm sure they're around.
I remember the Blaziken.
Yeah.
Does he think of me?
Yeah. That's great.
all the
very good.
time. He can't stop.
When our bones in the ocean.
And the other point. Oh, so that was the question I wanted to ask. This might be a question for producer Rick. Is that available anywhere anymore? It was a VOD. It was saved as a VOD for a really long time on our Twitch channel.
Sorry, hold on. I have to blow the rich horn.
Rich says to Derek, "Where were you when the Rittermark fell?" I knew that
Hark, ye rich.
I knew that would get Mace.
I wish I understood that reference, but I've never seen Lord of the Rings.
Okay, you need to see Lord of the Rings. Nikki needs to watch Indiana Jones. I need to watch Labyrinth. Mace and Mikey almost certainly. They're suspect. They haven't seen some shit, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I also need to see Breakfast Club. I've never seen Breakfast Club.
Wow, Derek, you're killing me. Jesus.
Those are my only two gaps.
Let's stick to the question here. Did producer Rick give us an answer? Is that
he said he's looking.
It's
oh
on
no!
our channel.
No
It's on our
way.
channel.
Please don't watch it. Take it down, quick. Take it down.
Oh, God.
You need to see Muppet Treasure Island, and you need to watch fucking the Muppet Christmas Story.
All right,
Yeah.
Derek, you're not listening.
We'll make that Patreon
Derek,
content.
we're
Remove
getting
that.
we're getting off topic here. The question is, I just wanted to know if this was available and if we can make it available to patrons.
Yeah, but he was looking.
Michael,
Can we
no,
talk
it's-
about the Muppets while he
No,
looks?
we can't talk about the Muppets. There's a whole TikTok about it.
Oh.
We will watch through it and see just how absolutely miserably awful it is.
I just wanted to make sure it was still like we
And
still
if
had it.
it's
That's all.
not
Wait, so-
horribly, miserably awful, I will talk to Rich about making it Patreon content.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
It's the Prime Party then? You said Vandris and Rodek and
Yeah, I was a
A
Fey
gnome
mage.
mage.
A gnome mage.
I was a gnome mage. Annulin was an elf hunter.
Elf hunter. Yep. We were.
That was back when you were still
We played World of
Shilby,
Warcraft.
correct?
I don't know what to tell you.
That was back when the subclass that I am now didn't even exist. The swashbuckler wasn't a thing.
Well,
Yeah, that only happened
Swashbuckler
right when
came
I
out
guessed
while-
it. Yeah.
I was gonna say that came out while you were streaming. You were in
Correct.
the Adelaide Blue arc.
That's correct.
You were
Wow.
on the pirate ship and you were
Mace
you were
with the D
swashbuckling.
cuts.
Listen. All I'm saying is I'm a fan of the channel. All right.
Me too. Me too, Mace.
You know, we gotta anyway. It is the if we can figure out a way to even like chop it up and maybe make it Patreon content or make it digestible or even just release it unedited as is, right? If that's acceptable, I think it would really paint a picture for how far we've come. And I think that a lot of people, especially people who've only recently started watching us, have no way to appreciate, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it would really put things into perspective and give the average person a glimpse into that, like,
What can
you know what I mean?
be?
Like, we're just people, right? We just got better at this over time, right?
We played a lot of D&D.
Yeah, that's right. It's a lot of reps. We got one final question, and I think what we'll do is we'll answer the question, and then we will do final thoughts from everybody, and then I have some homework for everyone for next week. And if you choose not to come back, that's okay. I need at least some of you to show up.
I'm not coming back.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. The final question, again, is from Gigi. Gigi asking 3 questions? More likely than you'd think. Anyway, what tricks do you use to make combat more stressful and fast-paced? We'll end on this question and final thoughts, and then we'll see you next week.
Ooh.
You have 30 seconds to tell me what you're doing, or you're taking the dodge action and I'm moving to the next player.
Ooh, you want to put a time constraint on it. Okay.
That's a really
Don't do that to everyone. Don't do that to everyone. But
to everyone.
I will say that I have used that to get people whipped into shape. You need to. I will go out of my way as a DM to say it's your turn. You're up next. It's your turn. You're on deck to come on. I will try to give people a heads up when they are the next person. But when they're this is combat. You have seconds to make decisions and to do the things that you're trying to do, and you can do a lot on your turn, especially at the higher levels. Don't be afraid to put a fire under their ass.
Love that.
Oh, go
Super
ahead,
cool.
Mace.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nikki.
No. By all means.
I like simple. I think something that I really love to do, and I don't just mean like playing around with stats. I love baking in mechanics that cause the fight to change or adapt organically as you go. Something that like I learned pretty early on when I started DMing, like at a home game, is like people would find out the AC of something and then they'd like write it down and they'd say, oh, the AC is this. And so like, I love being in a position where I'm like, yes, that's true. But now, and then
But
like
now,
something evolves. Like, I think not just like a phase 2, but evolving combat always keeps it like kind of fresh and exciting for me. And I love that shit.
From a mechanical perspective, you want to scare the shit out of players, crowd control and AoE damage. If you want to fucking absolutely dumpster and put the fear of God and Glob and you into your players, those are two things that many parties don't really think about, and don't know how to deal with. So just crowd control, incapacitating or restraining or getting certain players out of the fight. Don't overdo it because then it'll feel bad. But basically, taking players out and then doing a lot of AoE damage is a good way to make people sweat.
The negative energy bomb explodes. You are all at 1 hit point. And your teeth fall out, which means you can no longer cast spells with verbal components.
That's a nightmare, Derek. Don't ever do that.
Going into the Crooked Moon, Twists of Dread.
Yeah. Don't eat any bergamot.
Nikki.
I would say don't stop describing what's happening. Sometimes when you get into combat, it's easy to forget that you're still in a room and you're still in a world. And it becomes numbers and hits and attacks and damage. Remember to describe how awful these rooms are. One of the things that I really enjoyed in Edge of Midnight was anytime we had a boss fight, making sure to constantly remind them how gross the thing was that they were fighting, the way that it moved, the way that it talked, the way that it existed around them, the way that it changed the environment, and just how awful the environment itself was, because that will keep them interested. The more interested your players are in the combat that's happening, the quicker they're going to make their choices, and the more invested they're going to be, the more fast-paced and heart-pumping it's going to be.
Mace, did you go?
Yeah, I should.
Oh, okay, that everybody answered the question. So before we do final thoughts, I have homework for whoever desires to come back next week. We still didn't get through very much of what I wanted to get through tonight, which is okay. It's a beautiful thing. This is lovely. We're going to keep doing this. We're not going anywhere. What I would love for you all to do, though, is to think about your best tips, tricks, and common pitfalls for first-time DMs. That's what I want you to think about, okay? We touched on it a little bit tonight. We touched on some tips, right? Some tips and tricks. But I think one of the biggest things that we can talk about is common pitfalls. So if you could all do me a favor,
there's a lot.
And just make yourself a little list, right? Or a long list, I don't care. I'm going to do the same, and we'll see how much we all come up with together, right? And the next episode is going to be talking a little bit more about actually DMing your first session, because we barely got into the first sessions, talking about session prep and things like that. And we're going to spend the majority of the time answering questions and talking about tips, tricks, and common pitfalls. So,
I love that.
With that, I ask you, does anyone else have any final thoughts for the evening before I close out with our schedule for the upcoming week?
This was fun. Thank you for inviting me to Neon.
Thanks for coming.
Please join us all the time.
Every week.
This was
You're
a
welcome
very
whenever you want to be here.
nice first Neon Nights for Nikki.
Well, thank you for being here. We couldn't do this without you. This is important, right? Like, you being one of our mega awesome super DMs, like, we need you. So
I mean, I DM less than everyone else, so.
I don't know if that's true. I think you DM more than anybody, actually.
That's all I got. We are 40 VIPs away from our goal.
40.
So close.
40.
We got an hour.
We have less than an hour, 40. I think we can still hit it. So if you join us now, and if you become a VIP, you can vote on which subclass gets revealed. You have the power of Grayskull.
Oh, wow. I do?
I was going to say, the power
if you become a
is
VIP.
yours. Wow. Isn't that a Captain
Every
Planet thing? The power is
person
yours.
who isn't a VIP loses the power of Grayskull minus 50 DKP.
Okay.
Captain Planet, he's a hero. He's going to take pollution down to zero.
Down to zero, right?
Yeah.
All his powers magnified. He's fighting on the planet's side.
Oh wow, I didn't
I'll
forget.
get you.
I wanted to
Okay.
be able to reference something cool, so I googled what power does Lionel have, and it says the Transformer is capable of putting out 0 to 18 volts of variable AC to run your trains. What the hell?
That's not.
Wrong.
That's
I
just
just wanted
outrageous.
to
You
know
have
when he
Lion
uses the
O
sword
from
in that-
Thundercats?
Oh, is it Lion O?
It's
I thought it was
Lion Dash O is his name.
You're looking
It's
at
not
literally like an
Lionel.
electronic like transformer.
Means
It's
Lionel
like,
was just
the
a name.
Thundercat Dennis.
Lionel's just a name.
Gosh,
Yes.
why are you using
It's Chitara.
not direct current?
And
He's the way to go, Lion-O.
And
And
Kevin,
of course,
Kevin.
the most legendary Thundercats, Kevin and Dennis.
Tesla.
It
Tesla.
turns out
This is
he's
how
really
we
good
got
at
the
Thundercat.
Beaselberry.
I don't disagree that Lion-O is a stupid name. I don't
I'm talking
disagree.
about.
but
We're
Lionel.
going to scheduling. We're going to
He's got the
scheduling.
power
Okay,
of sight
sorry,
beyond
sorry.
sight.
If you are leaving, as we are going to leave soon, don't forget that we're going to be back on Twitch on Wednesday with Once Upon a Witchlight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Then this weekend, it's a chill weekend. We got nothing going on stream wise as far as
Wow.
that goes.
Nice.
But
Unbelievable.
we'll be back here on Monday for part 3 of the new first DM survival guide. Then we're going to be playing another episode of Witchlight on that Wednesday. Then that Friday, we've got Icebound.
Tune in on Wednesday.
Then our schedule continues as normal until September 16th, where we have the next 2 episodes of Stardust Rhapsody.
Oh snap.
So I'm gonna keep telling everybody about the schedule. Don't leave us for too long. Join us again on Wednesday. We'll see you over on Twitch. Thank you so much for being here. We
Yeah, let's
appreciate
end with
all
the
the
trailer.
support. None of this would be possible without you, and we love you all. So with that, I will say Godspeed and good night. We'll see you on Wednesday.
We'll end with
Go
the
become a
trailer,
VIP.
and we'll be
I
gone.
can't wait to
VIP.
die on Wednesday, and it'll just be 3 hours of Nikki describing sand blowing over different dunes.
VIP, Crooked Moon, thecrookedmoon.com. VIP, do it.
Good night.
Somewhere lost in the shrouded realms of death lies a land of endless night, where long forgotten horrors are revealed to those who travel through the mist. There, in a crooked house, lives a crooked man with a crooked grin who raises crooked arms to a crooked tree at the edge of midnight and hears the whispers of the old ones. They speak of a beast that stalks the darkest woods and darkest hearts, a crown of horns upon its head. If you lose your way and feel a warm breath that chills you to the bone, run. Follow the songs of harvest time, and before long you'll find revelry in the dancing shadows of blazing wicker. No matter your story, these lonesome misty rails will deliver you to where the hallowed cannot save you. Now's the time to brave the dark wood, beware the witching hour, and weave your own dreadful folktale underneath the crooked moon.